Chapter 746. Connolly also fanned the flames. Your Excellency Wolf King, this person is a Hua Xia Dharma cultivator. He might have a spatial artifact. Before you kill him, you must force him to hand over that artifact. Everyone thought that the Wolf King was going to kill Jiang Tian. Unexpectedly, the Wolf King's face stiffened. Bastard! How dare you disrespect Master Kong? In the next moment, his face was filled with anger. Without saying a word, he directly slapped Xiao En on the head. Sean's head was bleeding. He flew more than 10 meters away and rolled on the ground. He was half dead and barely breathing. Then, under Anfia's shocked gaze, Alessandra quickly walked up to Jiang Tian and bent his knees. Put on. He knelt down, lowered his arrogant head, and said with a trembling voice, "My Excellency Wolf King, Little Liger. Little Wolf Alexander greets Your Excellency Jiang Ligua. I wish Grandmaster Jiang Ligua to improve every day and live a long life." As soon as he said that, there was dead silence. Anfia, Connolly, Maiken, Berezov, and the others were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe their eyes as they stared at the young man in plain clothes, whose sleeves were fluttering in the wind and whose aura was otherworldly. The Wolf King's status in Russia was too high. Just like Yi Zhantian in Hua Xia, he could talk to the Russian emperor directly and talk to the Northern Army commander as equals. In the eyes of Anfia, Michael, and the others, he was like a high and mighty god, awe-inspiring and inviolable. But now, this famous Wolf King actually called himself Little Wolf and knelt down respectfully in front of Jiang Tian. This was too unbelievable. It was like a legend. In an instant, everyone couldn't come back to their senses. Their faces were full of shock and confusion. They wondered what kind of background this Hua Xia young man had to be able to make the Wolf King kneel down and submit to him. It's him. Suddenly, Berezov's expression changed rapidly. He suddenly exclaimed, "Dad, who is he?" Anfia and the others were still confused. The werewolves and oligarchs such as Berezov had already stepped forward and bowed deeply. They said in an unprecedentedly respectful tone, "Greetings, National Hunter Master Kong." Xiao En suddenly realized something, and his face turned as white as a sheet of paper. He was scared out of his wits, and he knelt down and begged for mercy. Connolly's body trembled, and he shook his head with a wry smile. A trace of despair flashed in his eyes. "I should have known. Among all the Chinese in the world, he's definitely the only one with such a powerful cultivation at such a young age." Seeing that the Wolf King's arm had yet to heal, Jiang Tian could not help but shake his head. It seemed that he still wanted her to help him fix his arm. That's right, Wolf King Alexander was indeed thinking this way. He knew that Jiang Tian's magic power was deep and unfathomable. To be able to restore Zhang Qianlei's youth, he must have a secret method to repair an arm. Since the wolf ancestor wasn't going to help him, he might as well rely on Jiang Tian. However, Jiang Tian would not accept him for nothing. He had to pay some price to show his loyalty. He raised his hand and pointed at Xiao En. "Is this your son? Along the way, he was disrespectful to me time and time again, trying to harm me. How dare you offend Master Kong? You really don't know what's good for you." Alexander stood up, and without saying a word, he grabbed Xiao En's head with his large hand. Amidst Xiao En's shrill screams, he suddenly twisted and directly twisted his head off. Alexander had spread his family in Russia and had many children. Xiao En should be considered his 6th generation of children, and he had at least hundreds of such children. Killing one was not a pity at all. Moreover, the Wolf clan was extremely vicious and cruel to begin with. They could not be judged by common sense. Once there was a child that he was dissatisfied with, the Wolf King had always killed him without mercy. Originally, he was extremely respectful of Jiang Tian, and he had a favor to ask of Jiang Tian. But now, Xiao En had offended Jiang Tian. This infuriated the Wolf King to the extreme, but also to the extreme of fear. With Jiang Tian's current strength, he might be able to defeat Master Kong, who was known as the Hunter of Nations, and hunt down France. Even the sect leader of Hua Xia's ancient Wudang sect, Qin Anping, and the leader of the Chinese Hong sect, Sidi Yuanhao, were killed by him. Now, Jiang Tian could defeat a mortal deity with 1 foot, and he was known as Earth Immortal Jiang. How could the Wolf King be a match for him? 10 Wolf Kings were not enough to fill the gaps between Jiang Tian's teeth. It could be said that if Jiang Tian wanted to, he could kill all the moon-worshipping wolves in a few breaths. For the Wolf King, as long as he could appease Jiang Tian's thunderous anger, what harm was there in killing 1 or 2 of his children? Shaoan's bloody head rolled to the ground. Mai Ken and the others were dumbfounded. They were so scared that they wet their pants. Their legs trembled as if they had seen a demon. This was too terrifying. Shaoan was the Wolf King's son, and his blood flowed in his veins. But now, the Wolf King had killed him just because of Jiang Tian's words. This showed how much the Wolf King respected Jiang Tian. At this moment, they were filled with regret. The lamb that they thought they could bully at will turned out to be a peerless powerhouse who could suppress the Wolf King. How could they be so blind as to offend such a terrifying existence? In fact, they should have known how powerful Jiang Tian was from the fact that Jiang Tian did not die after jumping off the plane. However, their prejudice against the Chinese made them look down on and offend Jiang Tian again and again. In their eyes, the Chinese were weak, and easily bullied. They were as vulnerable as sheep. They had been enemies with Jiang Tian all this time, and finally, they were faced with death. Look, I told you that the Wolf King can't do anything to me even if I kill you. Do you believe me now? Jiang Tian chuckled, glanced at everyone, and said leisurely, I told you that I can kill all of you without a problem. Do you believe me now? We believe you. Master Kong, we believe you. Master Kong, please forgive me. I'm willing to be your servant. Connolly, Mai Ken, and the rest were trembling with fear. They kowtowed to Jiang Tian like they were pounding garlic. They were so scared that their souls were about to leave their bodies. Their heads knocked heavily on the ice and rocks, causing them to bleed profusely. Blood flowed down from their heads. Believe me, and I'll kill you all the same. Jiang Tian's expression was cold. He snorted and kicked Mai Ken to death. Your Excellency. Mai Ken's father, who was also an oligarch under the Wolf King's protection, cried out in shock and anger. If you dare say another word, I'll kill you too. The Wolf King's cold eyes stared at Mai Ken's father as he scolded coldly. Mai Ken's father was originally gnashing his teeth, but he was shocked when he saw the Wolf King's determination. In the end, the hatred in his heart turned into a deep sigh. Connolly was shocked when he saw Mai Ken was killed. He turned around and ran, his body turning into a flame. The person who can escape from my hands hasn't been born yet. The corners of Jiang Tian's mouth curled up into a mocking smile. However, he did not attack and only shouted. The next moment, Connolly's body was shattered and his divine soul was annihilated. He turned into a pile of ashes and fell to the ground. On the surface, Connolly was the leader of the Anphia family's guard regiment, but his real identity was not ordinary. He was one of the 5 shamans of an ancient sect in the Caucasus. He was able to control fire, and even transcendent grandmasters had to be careful when he used the hellfire. But at this time, in front of Jiang Tian, he didn't even last a second and died a violent death, his body and soul destroyed. When everyone saw this, they felt their hair stand on end and were filled with fear. Even the Wolf King was shaken and emotionally moved. Master Kang's powers seemed to have improved a lot. He was so powerful that he couldn't even fathom how powerful he was. Even if he wanted to kill Connolly, it would take at least 15 minutes. However, he had never thought that Jiang Tian would be able to kill him with the incantation of truth. Jiang Tian didn't want to kill the rest of the people. They were just a bunch of ants. After that, the Wolf King would naturally make them wish they were dead. Even their families would suffer. He is the world-famous Kong Techu. Barazov finally revealed Jiang Tian's name to his daughter. He is the one who suppressed France and defeated a mortal deity. What? He's Kong Techu? Anphia's face paled. As the daughter of an oligarch and a former member of the KGB, she had heard of Jiang Tian. After the other young masters and the guards talked for a while, their faces were filled with fear. They were scared out of their wits. Ever since Jiang Tian started to develop overseas, he was like the sun in the sky in the world, especially in the upper-class society. His name shook the world. During the battle with Sidoni, he had defeated the pantheon of gods, Winter Soldier, and Blue Storm, the three top organizations in the world. During the Gulf of Tonkin incident, he had forced President Sanchi to step down and the President of the European Union to bow his head. Anfia was extremely regretful at this moment. She had missed the opportunity. If she had treated Jiang Tian courteously and valued him, she could have at least become Jiang Tian's friend. If she had become Jiang Tian's friend, her family would have been invincible in Russia. Even the Wolf King would have to give her face. However, she had missed the opportunity. Master Kong, are you here for the opening of the Sword Catacomb? Wolf King Alexander asked. That's right. Jiang Tian nodded and asked with a frown, you know about the Sword Catacomb too? Master Kong, the reason why the Winter Soldier chose to be stationed in the Severnaya Zemlya was to make it easier to explore the secrets of the Sword Catacomb. The Wolf King said respectfully. For a long time, the gene fusion between werewolves and ordinary humans could not be successfully edited. There was a rejection reaction. When the Sword Catacomb opened last time, we obtained a divine herb inside. After the genetic warrior consumed it, the fusion was successful. It can be said that without the Sword Catacomb, there would be no Winter Soldier. In addition, the Wolf Clan obtained some ancient books and magic weapons from it, which made us very powerful. My method of controlling moonlight was actually obtained from the Sword Catacomb. At this point, his face was full of longing. But before this, we had only explored the periphery of the Sword Catacomb and did not enter the core area. With Master Kang's power, he should be able to enter the core area and gain a lot. Let's go! Jiang Tian was straightforward. His figure was like a dragon as he flew into the distance. The Wolf King led the pack of wolves and quickly followed. People like Berezov and Anfia could only follow from a distance. Their speed was too slow. While flying, the Wolf King suddenly said in a low voice, Master Kong, you have to be careful. This time, the wolf ancestor is also going. That old man just now? Jiang Tian said with a disdainful smile. Chapter 747. Thus, he saw Master Kong just now, but he didn't greet him. He turned around and went toward the Sword Tomb. Obviously, he wants to monopolize the Sword Tomb. The Wolf King smiled bitterly. In this world, only Master Kong dared to call the wolf ancestor an old man. He wants to monopolize the Sword Tomb? He thinks too highly of himself. Jiang Tian laughed and sped up. If he dares to provoke me, I'll slap him to death. It turned out that Jiang Tian deliberately slowed down in order to observe the snow demon. Now that the snow demon had been destroyed, Jiang Tian's speed soared. In just 2 to 3 hours he arrived before a mountain range. Jiang Tian was afraid that the Wolf King and the others would fall behind. Otherwise, he would be even faster. 9 glacial peaks rose from the ground. They were dozens of meters high and extremely steep, like sharp swords inserted into the ground. These 9 peaks were also connected by glaciers, forming a valley with a radius of half a kilometer. In the valley, white fog and snowflakes swirled in the air. There were powerful fluctuations of magic power, and there were flashing lights, swallowing and spitting out auspicious colors. It contrasted well with the aurora in the sky, looking very attractive. At the entrance of the valley, there was a stone tablet. On it, there were 2 large words written in iron and silver, Sword Tomb. This is a real sharp sword. A sword that is dozens or even hundreds of meters long, and it's a quasi-spiritual weapon. The immortal of 9 swords is really extraordinary. Jiang Tian looked at the 9 peaks and projected his divine sense. He couldn't help but feel shocked and slightly moved. But he didn't expect that when Jiang Tian arrived, Anfia, Berezov, and the others had already arrived. It turned out that after the snow demon died, the strange electromagnetic interference immediately disappeared. Satellite phones, walkie-talkies, and other communication devices could be used. In order to explore the secrets of the Sword Tomb, Berezov and these oligarchs built a modern base on a nearby island with helicopters, snowmobiles, and so on. Now that the communication was smooth, they immediately called a helicopter and arrived first. In fact, they were not the only ones who had arrived. dozens of Russian grand shamans, and physical awakeners had also arrived. These grand shamans, sorcerers, and physique awakened ones were all extremely powerful. They were as powerful as transcendent grandmasters or Dharma spellmasters. Among them, some of the most outstanding ones could even be said to be half a step into the divine realm or even the divine realm. When Jiang Tian and the Wolf King arrived, these Russian powerhouses only nodded slightly, not showing much respect. The Wolf King's strength was actually at the deity realm. Many of these experts' cultivation levels were not far from his. In fact, some hidden experts might even be stronger than him. After all, the Wolf King Alexander was only the strongest person in Russia. There were those who were more powerful than him in seclusion. However, Berezov immediately led Anfia and the others to break through the wind and snow and greeted them with a look of despair. Master Kong, Your Excellency Wolf King, the wolf ancestor and his subordinates won't let us in. Don't let anyone else in. Jiang Tian scanned the valley with his immortal will and saw a few hundred werewolves scattered around the valley. Every single one of them held sharp blades and magic tools in their hands, and they stood ramrods straight like sentinels. They were completely silent and solemn, and their gazes were fierce as they swept the surroundings, seeming as if they would directly annihilate the slightest disagreement. The wolf ancestor sat cross-legged at the entrance of the valley with a mighty mace next to him. His eyes were closed and he was motionless. His body was covered in thick snow and he looked like an ice sculpture. There was a line in front of him and a line of words was written in Chinese, English, and Russian. A line of domineering words. Anyone who crosses this line will die. It was strange. The snow was falling and the wind was howling. However, the heavy snow couldn't cover the words and the wind couldn't blow them away. It seemed that the words contained a certain amount of Dharma power, which made the wind and snow go away. Because of this, the grand shamans, sorcerers, and physique awakened ones didn't dare to take a step forward. The wolf ancestor doesn't only have a strong bloodline and body, but he also has a lot of Dharma power. Seeing this, the Wolf King's face showed a hint of fear and envy. He approached Jiang Tian and reported. Jiang Tian looked at him with disdain. What Dharma power? In terms of Dharma power, even if the nine-sword deity was still alive, he wouldn't be a match for Kong Teichu. Even if the nine-sword deity was really from the ruins of immortality, the ruins of immortality was still an extremely remote place in the entire realm of cultivation. How could the people from the ruins of immortality be more powerful than Jiang Tian, who had been cultivating for 10,000 years? Wolf King, the wolf ancestor, is the ancestor. So, you should be his son, right? However, Jiang Tian didn't want to talk about this, so he asked. Master Kong, there are many branches of the werewolves. I belong to the moon-worshipping werewolves and he belongs to the icefield werewolves. There are also the grassland werewolves and the bloodthirsty werewolves. I don't belong to the same clan as him, so I'm not his son. The Wolf King said respectfully. As for the name of the wolf ancestor, it's actually based on strength. Every 60 years, the werewolves of the world will hold a duel and the most powerful one will be called the wolf ancestor. The wolf ancestor is the most powerful werewolf in the last duel. However, he hates humans and wants the werewolves to rule the world. He calls himself a loner, but the other werewolves don't recognize him. Jiang Tian's face showed a hint of contempt. He sneered and said, "Ha, arrogant fool. Even among the thousands of races in the universe, humans were still the most powerful cultivation race, let alone these werewolves." Seeing this, the Wolf King said seriously. But Master Kong, this kid is indeed very powerful. I heard that he had entered Huaxia in the late Qing dynasty and his strength was enough to crush Chen Anping and the others. He also experienced the Napoleonic Wars. Some even said that he was the key to the Russian Tsar's victory over the stronger Napoleon. He has lived for 300 years. Jiang Tian scanned with his immortal will and wasn't surprised. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. The wolf ancestor was 300 years old? That was too scary. He was not human at all. He was a living fossil. That's right. The Wolf King's face was gloomy. He frowned and said, The wolf ancestor and the dire wolves are the native werewolves of Russia. They have been inextricably linked to the Russian Tsar since ancient times. 200 years ago, Napoleon swept across Europe and went on an expedition to Russia. The Russian Tsar at that time was muddle-headed and useless. Napoleon swept his way through and successfully took over Moscow. But after Napoleon took over Moscow, he took the initiative to retreat. On the way back, he suffered from extremely cold weather and was defeated in the end. As far as I know, the key to Russia's victory was the help of the dire wolves. Why is this related to the wolf ancestor? Anfia asked curiously. According to the historical records, it was because of a fire in Moscow, which was occupied by France. The French's provisions, cannons, and firearms were all destroyed in the fire. They had no choice but to retreat from Moscow. And when the French retreated, they suffered from extreme cold. The weather was not on their side, so they lost. Don't you think it's strange? The Wolf King smiled. Napoleon's army had already taken over Moscow and set up a temporary government and police. But a super fire broke out in Moscow, and the fire was all in important military areas. And it was only October at that time, but the cold wave came a few months in advance and turned Russia into a world of ice and snow. The Wolf King said solemnly. In fact, the Russian military intelligence had already deciphered it. This was all done by the wolf ancestor and his disciples. They were the ones who set the French's military camp on fire. The wolf ancestor also summoned wind and snow to bring extreme weather, freezing tens of thousands of French soldiers to death. In the Muroslavets region, just a few dozen dire wolves slaughtered 100,000 French soldiers. The wolf ancestor alone killed more than 30,000 people. What? One person slaughtered 30,000 soldiers. Everyone was shocked and could not believe it. They looked at the wolf ancestor with shock and fear. They did not expect this skinny and ordinary-looking old man to have such a valiant battle record. At that time, there were already cannons and guns. Although they were not as powerful as the modern army, it was still very scary to be able to kill 30,000 people alone. Besides, that was 200 years ago. The wolf ancestor had been cultivating for so long. How powerful must he be? Master Kong, Your Excellency Wolf King, why don't we just call it a day? At this moment, everyone had the intention of retreating out of fear of difficulties. With the wolf ancestor here, it was truly a case of one man holding back 10,000 men. Anyone who wanted to enter the sword tomb was courting death. Master Kong was very powerful, but he was still not as powerful as this old monster who had lived for hundreds of years. The wolf ancestor was an immortal state warrior 100 years ago. He had been on the power rankings several times 100 years ago and was on par with Zeus of the older generation. The Wolf King sighed enviously. It was said that although he lost to Hao Taichung, the top swordsman of the late Qing dynasty, he was able to escape unscathed. In Russia, when the Tsar was still alive, the wolf ancestor was on equal footing with the Tsar. Even the commander-in-chief of the military had to be courteous to him. He was much more powerful than I am now. What he said was true. Martial artists, cultivators, superpower users, and other super overlords were related to modern technology, especially military technology. 200 years ago, technology was not so developed. Overlords like the wolf ancestor who could fight against 10,000 people alone were like weapons of mass destruction and strategic weapons. They were highly valued by the governments of the major countries, just like humanoid nuclear bombs. But with the rise of technology, the secular governments had a new reliance and didn't want these super overlords to be in power. The status of super overlords was severely weakened. Even the United States and other major countries used to hunt down immortal state warriors all over the world. The moon-worshipping Wolf King and his people, as well as the kindred, were once chased by the modern army like stray dogs. Super overlords like the Palace of Gods and the Winter Army didn't dare to challenge the modern army no matter how powerful they were. Instead, they struggled under the support and control of the modern army and became their vassals and murderous tools. However, after the October Revolution, the Russian regime collapsed. Many of the wolf ancestor and his people were killed. He didn't want to be loyal to the new regime, so he went to the northern islands and hid in the Wolf Ancestor Mountain. The Wolf King's deep eyes flashed with a hint of vicissitudes. He sighed with a gloomy face. Okay. Jiang Tian nodded. The next moment, he walked lazily toward the entrance of the sword vault and said calmly, "A good dog doesn't block the way. Get out of my way." Chapter 748. The moment these words were spoken, the entire place was dead silent. Everyone was shocked. Many Russian overlords and magnates looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. He's dead meat. How dare he disrespect the Wolf Ancestor? Doesn't he know who the Wolf Ancestor is? A Russian Grand Shaman exclaimed in disbelief. This Huaxia boy must be crazy. A Russian half-step immortal state warrior sneered. Where did he come from? Huaxia? Since when did Huaxia have the right to set foot in the sword tomb? Everyone discussed. Yeah, the Wolf Ancestor was an immortal state warrior 100 years ago. He must be a mortal deity now. An overlord who had awakened his physique and was comparable to a transcendent grandmaster looked at Jiang Tian gloatingly, as if Jiang Tian was about to die. Yeah, when the Wolf Ancestor helped the Tsar defeat the Grand Master of the Qing dynasty, this young man was still in his liquid state. Someone grunted. Even Berezov and the others were a bit dumbfounded. Crazy. Too crazy. The Master Kong of Huaxia was too arrogant. They thought it was reasonable for Jiang Tian to torture Xiao En and Connolly. After all, Jiang Tian's identity and strength were there. He could defeat the French army and the Wolf Ancestor, so he was certainly qualified to kill Xiao En and the others. However, the Wolf Ancestor was much more powerful than the Wolf Ancestor. He was the most powerful wolf in the world. After all, the Wolf Ancestor was the most powerful wolf in the world. The Wolf Ancestor was a reclusive old monster. He had killed tens of thousands of people and was a veteran expert with a lifespan of 300 years. Even if Jiang Tian caught up with him, he would only be on par with the Wolf Ancestor. The most rational thing for Jiang Tian to do was to negotiate with him and work with him. However, they had never thought that Jiang Tian would be so arrogant. Wasn't he stirring up trouble? At this moment, even Anfia was so anxious that she stomped her feet. She was a bit disappointed in Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian's charm had suddenly disappeared. Logically speaking, Jiang Tian was in charge of a country and a religion, so he should understand the essence of cooperation and compromise. How could he be as stupid as a brat and directly make an enemy out of the Wolf Ancestor? Among the crowd, only Maichen's father was overjoyed. I was helpless when you killed my son. But this time, you have offended the Wolf Ancestor. He will be furious. You can only die. How dare you? How dare you disrespect the Wolf Ancestor? Kneel down and beg for forgiveness. Wolf Ancestor, the ancestor of all wolves, the strongest of the 10,000 races. His bloodline is noble and his strength is formidable. How dare you act so impudently? You're courting death. As expected, many of the Icefield Wolf tribe members were enraged as they howled and roared at Jiang Tian. Each of them was as powerful as a transcendent grandmaster. Among them, a dozen wolf servants were as powerful as immortal state warriors. Hundreds of wolf servants roared at the same time, creating a sonic boom that sounded like rolling thunder. Boom, boom. The sonic boom was so powerful that it blasted the ground like a cannonball. It stirred up snow and created a huge crater. Immediately, many of the experts around the sword tomb were shaken by the aftershock of the sound wave. The blood in their chests surged, and they almost fell to the ground. Sigh, we shouldn't have come this time. There are so many powerful overlords here. If we go, we will only be cannon fodder. The sonic boom was too much for them to bear. If it hit them directly, they would be smashed into pieces. As for Berezov and the other secular oligarchs and magnates, they were all lying on the ground like lowly insects. After all, the wolf attendants were experts at the god-rank realm. Any one of them could command the Winter Army and become an important weapon of the country. They were on par with Alexander the Wolf King. However, the Icefield Wolf tribe had a cold relationship with the current Russian regime. Therefore, they didn't want to come out. You are indeed Jiang Ligua, Earth deity Jiang. You are indeed arrogant. The wolf ancestor suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes suddenly emitted a green light that was more than 3 meters long. His haggard face was calm as he spoke. This old man knows how powerful you are. You once swept through the French army and crushed many powerful organizations. Your battle achievements are glorious. You are known as Earth deity Jiang. He was actually speaking fluent Chinese. This was not surprising. Overlords like him had traveled around the world in search of opportunities and resources. They were proficient in all kinds of languages. You are the most talented and the most powerful young man I have ever seen in the past 200 to 300 years. The wolf ancestor's 2 eyes were like 2 green divine lamps that illuminated the ancient times, causing people's hearts to palpitate. He said calmly, "If you continue to remain calm and cultivate bitterly for 100 years, even this old man will have to avoid you when I see you. I won't dare to fight you head-on." At this point he was still admiring and praising. But the next moment, the old man's face became serious and his voice became cold. He said disdainfully, "But you are too arrogant. You don't know how to hide your strength and bide your time. You are too arrogant and have made too many enemies." It turns out that he is Kong Taichu. Yes, it's that Jiang Taichu who suppressed the winter soldiers and beat up the Russian world of powerhouses so badly that it was hard to breathe. Alexander the Wolf King is so shameless. He is Kong Taichu's accomplice. Damn it. At this time, many Russian overlords knew the origin of Jiang Tian, but they were all angry and stood against Jiang Tian. It should be noted that too many werewolves, shamans died at the hands of Jiang Tian in the Battle of Sodom. In that battle, almost half of the Russian overlords died, which was a great loss to the Russian overlords. And the overlords who died in that battle were related to many of the people present, or were friends or relatives. Of course, they hated Jiang Tian very much. If we help the wolf ancestor kill Jiang Taichu now, I think the old man will let us go and let us enter the sword tomb. There were even more wise people who thought of a deeper level. Sensing everyone's hostility, Jiang Tian snorted coldly. Bide my time? What qualifications do you ants have for me to bide my time? Too many enemies? So what if the whole world is my enemy? I have said it before. If the Dark Parliament, the Holy See, the Wolf Clan, the Blood Clan, or the descendants of gods want to provoke me, I will kill them all. Jiang Tian glanced at the crowd and finally his eyes fell on Wolf Ancestor. He said disdainfully, "To tell you the truth, I'm not targeting anyone. It's just that everyone here is trash in my eyes." "Ah, trash? We are trash? I am trash?" Wolf Ancestor's green eyes were filled with viciousness and viciousness. He was so angry that he laughed and said arrogantly, "Jiang Taichu, what right do you think you have to spout nonsense in front of me and offend me? I am the ancestor of the Wolf Clan. 200 years ago, I killed 30,000 French soldiers of Napoleon. Even the Russian Tsar had to bow to me when he saw me. I once had a drink with the founder of the Hong sect, Sidu Shao. I had a sword duel with the most powerful swordsman of the Qing dynasty, Hao Taichung. Even the royal family of your country was afraid of me. You, a mere arrogant brat, a junior, what qualifications do you have to compete with me? What qualifications do you have to speak rudely and call me a dog and trash?" The more he talked, the angrier he became. His voice became louder and louder until the last sentence was uttered. The moment his voice fell, a sound wave immediately condensed wind, snow, and ice crystals. Like a sharp longsword, it pierced out toward Jiang Tiandong. This ice crystal sword was 20 meters long, sharp, and cold. It could easily kill an immortal state warrior. It was as powerful as the snow demon's ice arrow and was far more powerful than the ice spells of the snow witch Plehanova. A helicopter that was blocking between him and Jiang Tian was directly blasted into pieces, turning into scrap metal and flying away. The ice crystal sword pierced through a few hundred meters and went straight for Jiang Tian. Wherever it passed, the air was torn apart and the air trembled. The violent Dharma power crushed the glacier. This scene was simply too shocking. This was even more powerful than the mantra of truth. He had reached the level of a mortal deity. Jiang Tian waved his hand. Kaboom! With a bang, the 20-meter-long profound ice sword shattered. The wolf ancestor grunted and his skinny body shook slightly. A hint of fear appeared on his face. He felt that Jiang Tian's mana was very deep, so deep that it was unfathomable. He immediately became vigilant in his heart. You're only a saint, equivalent to the mortal deity of Huaxia. You're on par with Zeus. Jiang Tian looked at him with disdain and said, I've told you, you're no match for me. You're too weak. Hee, Master Kong, if he can't beat you, I'll help you. Suddenly, a strange laugh came from afar. Suddenly, billions of snowflakes floated in the air within a few kilometers and even the wind stopped. That was an extremely shocking sight. Billions of snowflakes floated in the air like special effects in a movie, which defied the laws of physics. How powerful was his Dharma power and soul energy to be able to control such an astonishing amount of snowflakes? Everyone was frightened and turned their heads to look. They saw an old man wearing a sheepskin coat and holding a wilted plum cane. He kept coughing as he walked over step by step. After he walked over, countless snowflakes seemed to come alive and fell to the ground. The crutch in his hand had withered and cracked. However, the plum blossoms on it bloomed in the cold. They were as red as blood and had a sinister and cold aura. Who is he? What a powerful cultivation! He can control billions of snowflakes without saying a word. I'm afraid he's a mortal deity or a saint. When the experts around the sword tomb saw this old man, they felt a sense of trepidation and uneasiness. Where the plum blossoms pass, nothing grows. Ferocious ghosts dominate and suppress the underworld. I'm wolf ancestor of the semi-hidden Tianshan sect, Li Jiuyo. A hint of fear finally appeared on the wolf ancestor's face. He slowly got up and bowed to the old man to show his highest respect. Chapter 749. Li Jiuyo was the best cultivator of ice spells in the world. He was even more famous than Qinonping. He had been famous at the end of the Qing dynasty. Although Wolf Ancestor was powerful, he was still inferior to this old man. So he didn't dare to act rashly. According to your cultivation system, you reached the peak of the human celestial realm a year ago and are even more powerful than Wolf Ancestor. But compared with me, you are still too weak. Facing Li Jiuyo, Jiang Tian flicked his sleeves and still looked at him disdainfully. Many powerhouses were stunned. Jiang Tian had indeed killed a human celestial before, but this old man was at the peak of the human celestial realm. He was so arrogant that he didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Ha, Kong Teichu, you are too arrogant. Hearing that, Li Jiuyo laughed wildly. A powerful murderous aura shot up to the sky and even the clouds in the sky were restrained. His face was gloomy and ferocious. His voice was like the cry of an owl or the whisper of an underground demon. He said sarcastically, "You are just a rogue cultivator from the secular world. How can you compare with me? Now that you have seen my peerless power, don't you realize the huge gap between you and me?" At this time, everyone nodded in their hearts. The gap between Jiang Tian and Li Jiuyo was not just a gap, but a chasm. An insurmountable chasm. Li Jiuyo had lived for more than 200 years and could control billions of snowflakes within a radius of 10 miles. His Dharma power was so vast and deep that it was like a vast ocean. Jiang Tian was only in his 20s. No matter how talented he was, it was difficult for him to reach such a cultivation level. Besides, if you think I am the only one who wants to kill you today, you are wrong. Hearing Li Jiuyo's words. Could it be that there are more powerhouses? Everyone was shocked. Up there, some powerhouses suddenly felt something and looked up at the sky in horror. Bush, bush, bush. Suddenly, in the depths of the rolling clouds and auroras, many figures jumped down from the clouds. Some of them were not afraid of the height of 1,000 meters and directly fell to the ground, causing the ground to tremble. Some spread their wings of genuine qi and glided for a while like huge falcons before landing steadily. The most eye-catching one was the Taoist priest in the lead. He directly rode on the clouds and floated over like an immortal. A total of 6 figures landed on the ground. The leader was about 30 years old. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was dressed as a Taoist. He wore a loose robe with large sleeves. He had a handsome temperament. There was a sword embroidered on the chest of his robe. This person cupped his fists, looked around, and said with a smile, "Dian Song sect leader Zhou Zixuan greets everyone." Zhou Zixuan, looks like you've broken through the half-step human immortal realm and the human immortal realm. Congratulations. Li Jiuyo said with a strange laugh. Riding on the clouds, traversing the void. This was also the mark of a human immortal. Many of the Russian experts were also shocked. They looked at each other in dismay, their hearts filled with shock and emotion. Hua Xia's cultivation world truly had a deep foundation. 2 human immortals were born in one day. In the world of the world's top experts, Hua Xia didn't seem to stand out. They were far less famous than Europe's Holy See, Umbra Parliament, Pantheon, and America's Cosmic Shield and Blue Storm. There didn't seem to be many immortal realm cultivators or human immortals. Now, only Jiang Tian and Yu Zhantian were famous. But in just a few minutes, a peak human immortal and a beginner human immortal had appeared. If this news were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge uproar and shock the entire world of experts. However, it wasn't strange. Hua Xia's civilization had a long history and was shining brightly. When a devastating disaster struck, the Hua Xia people didn't run away like the Jews or pray for the mercy of the heavens to give them a Noah's Arkansas. Instead, they worked hard to fight, from the Great 98 flood to the world-shocking earthquake. In order to solve the problem of transportation between the north and the south, hundreds of years ago, the Hua Xia people opened up the Beijing-Hangzhou Grand Canal, which was equivalent to the length of the United Kingdom. In order to solve the problem of floods and irrigation, the Chinese people built the Dujianjian Dam, which had been in use for more than 2,000 years. In order to resist foreign aggression and protect the civilians, the Chinese people built the Great Wall. If 1 mile was not enough, then 10,000 miles. In terms of time, 5,000 years ago, the Chinese people faced the flood like the ancient Egyptians. 4,000 years ago, they played with bronze like the ancient Babylonians. 3,000 years ago, they thought about philosophy like the ancient Greeks. 2,000 years ago, they went on expeditions like the Romans. 8,000 years ago, they were as rich as the Arabs. 500 years ago, they wandered the ocean like the Spaniards. Now, they were competing with the United States. For 5,000 years, the Chinese people had been playing mahjong on the table of the world, while the other countries had changed many rounds. The core of the spirit of Chinese civilization was that man can conquer nature, and the courage to transform oneself and nature. The understanding of nature also took into account the oneness of man and nature, and was good at using nature and external forces. This was actually related to the essence of cultivation, going against nature and following nature. Therefore, the cultivation civilization of Hua Xia had also become a bright pearl in human history. It could be said that on a global scale, Hua Xia cultivators were a force that could not be ignored. However, many Hua Xia cultivators were quiet and didn't want to cause trouble, so they didn't know. Zhou Zixuan, you want to be my enemy too? Jiang Tian snorted and raised his eyebrows. In my eyes, you're just an ant. Master Kong, the old man knows that you're very strong, but if you resist stubbornly today, there's no chance of you surviving. Zhou Zixuan shook his head and said regretfully, the old man and fellow Taoist Zhang Qianlei were very close back then. They used to sleep together and talk all night. I heard that you're also friends with him, so I don't want to see you die. If you kowtow to the Wolf King and admit your mistakes, I'll intercede on your behalf and let you live. Zhou Zixuan, you guys are too funny. Jiang Tian said disdainfully, the 3 of you are still too far away from the sage immortals. Are there any earth immortals? I'll kill a few of them. As soon as these words came out, everyone went crazy. They couldn't believe it and thought that Jiang Tian had gone crazy. An earth immortal. His strength was equivalent to the sage king of the West. That was a peerless powerhouse with a lifespan of more than 300 years. They could destroy a city with a sword and shake a mountain with one hand. They could overturn rivers and seas, shatter mountains and rivers, and form rivers. They were almost immortal and comparable to true gods. Even in the Holy See, which had a strong foundation, there were only a few earth immortals and sage kings in the past 1,000 years. Because there were so few earth immortals and sages, they were almost legendary and mythical, so they were also called legends. But Jiang Tian was shouting that a few earth immortals would be killed by him. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. He really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Hearing this, Zhou Zixuan was so angry that he laughed at Jiang Tian. He simply didn't want to bother. Okay, that's the old man's fault. But today, there might be a few earth immortals for you to kill. Kong Teichu, you're so arrogant. You even want to kill an earth immortal. No wonder you even dared to kill my sister, Hao Hongmei. At this moment, a dazzling red light pierced through the void and came across. The sword radiance was dazzling and the red light filled the sky. It was like a long rainbow, suppressing the colorful auroras in the sky. Clang. A huge mountain more than 600 meters high was directly pierced through by the red light and exploded. Instantly, waves of snow surged into the sky, and rocks flew into the air. After shooting hundreds of meters, they smashed into the ground, causing another earthquake. Oh my God! Who is so powerful? This attack is as powerful as a missile. All the powerhouses present were scared out of their wits and couldn't believe it. As soon as this powerhouse appeared, his sword qi pierced through the sky and destroyed the mountains. It was so overbearing and fierce that it was much more powerful than Zhou Zixuan and Li Jiuyo. He is definitely at the peak of the human immortal or half a step to earth immortal. Some Russian powerhouses even screamed and crawled on the ground, trembling. This kind of destructive power was beyond the reach of human beings. It was too powerful and destructive, just like the ancient deities. In front of this destructive power, even the wolf ancestor's pupils contracted and he shouted in surprise, "Is it him?" Yes, it's Hao Taichung, the top swordsman at the end of the Qing dynasty, the sword cultivator of Mount Shu and the sect leader of Mount Amei. Zhou Zixuan bowed respectfully to the distance. This old guy is so hot-tempered. Every time he appears, he will make a big scene. Li Jiuyo's face was full of jealousy and he snorted. But look at this situation, this old guy didn't cultivate in seclusion for decades in vain. He has already become a blood-divine sword and is half a step to earth immortal. At this time, the Wolf King's heart skipped a beat and his face changed color. After Hao Taichung's arrival, the Wolf King didn't have much confidence in Jiang Tian. Yes, Jiang Tian had killed Situ Yuanhao, a human immortal. But Situ Yuanhao had just reached the human immortal level and was only half a step away. Many people guessed that Jiang Tian's cultivation was only at the middle stage of the human immortal, which meant that there was a big gap between him and a half step to earth immortal. No matter how powerful Jiang Tian's cultivation art was, it was difficult to make up for the gap in cultivation with cultivation art. Is this person also coming from Mr. Jiang? Why did Mr. Jiang offend so many powerhouses? I'm afraid Mr. Jiang is in danger this time. Barazov and the other oligarchs hesitated and wondered if they should leave Jiang Tian's side. They used to be the Wolf King's subordinates, but now they all felt that it was irrational for the Wolf King to side with Jiang Tian. Hao Taichung's sword could break mountains and shake mountains. The strength he had displayed was too terrifying and powerful. But when faced with this kind of majestic power, people would feel very weak, helpless, and uneasy, and their hearts would be filled with fear. The red light spread out and finally converged, turning into 3 silhouettes. 2 young people, a man and a woman, had an ethereal temperament. They were like immortals who walked on snow without leaving a trace. They clustered around an old man. Not to mention the old man, just the 2 young people were outstanding and outstanding. They were also powerful and profound, making many powerhouses present feel ashamed of their inferiority. This man and woman were by Diqing and Song Shuang. They came hand in hand like a couple. Jiang Tian, I didn't expect that I would become a disciple of a Mei sect and become the pro-disciple of sect leader Hao, right? You're dead today. Song Shuangyan's jade-white chin was slightly raised. Her eyes were cold and disdainful, like a god overlooking an ant. Chapter 750. She knew how powerful Jiang Tian was. After all, Jiang Tian's battle record was there. She was not a fool. But in her opinion, compared to her master, Jiang Tian was still far too weak. Who was Hao Taichung? The Amei Sword Sect's headmaster. The Amei Sword Sect was the second in the world among the semi-hidden sections. Their martial arts were pure and vast. Their foundation was deep, their history was deep, and their martial arts were powerful. They were second only to Kunlun. In Song Shuangyan's opinion, even if Jiang Tian had some achievements, he was just a rogue cultivator from the secular world. How could he be compared to the headmaster of a famous sect? It was like comparing a street punk and a fighting grandmaster. They were not at the same level. Jiang Tian, you broke my meridians and destroyed my cultivation. But Ancestor Xian has already helped me repair my meridians. Now I can still cultivate. My cultivation has even improved. You didn't expect this, did you? Bai Diqing said proudly. Bai Diqing, you stupid roe deer. Don't you know that Song Shuangyan is a jinx? After Jiang Tian saw the two young people, his face was full of ridicule. Lu Lishuan was already jinxed to death by him. You still want to be jinxed by him? Do you think your life is too long? Hearing this, the two of them were so angry that they almost exploded on the spot. Jiang Tian's mouth was simply too vicious. With one sentence, he scolded the two of them. But in the next moment, Jiang Tian was too lazy to pay attention to them. His pupils slightly constricted as he stared at the old man. This old man had a leopard head and round eyes. His face was ferocious. He had a wide mouth and fangs. His murderous intent was very strong. He was ferocious, just like Yan Qixia in the movies. This old man is Hao Taichung? Sure enough, he is just like his sister Hao Hongmei. He looks like the old man and old woman on the bus. Jiang Tian secretly despised in his heart. Kang Teichu, why don't you fight with me quickly? Or, you can just cut your throat to apologize, so that I don't have to do it. Hao Taichung's murderous intent was dense. As soon as he came up, he pointed at Jiang Tian and roared loudly. Old man, you're too weak. Jiang Tian smiled lazily and shook his head in disappointment. You're just a half-step earthen immortal. Not enough for me to kill you with just one finger. Earth immortal? You guys are too weak. You don't even have an earth immortal. Immeasurable heavenly sovereign. Hao Taichung cursed, I'm a half-step earth immortal. Killing you is as easy as killing a chicken. He took a step forward and charged towards Jiang Tian. But suddenly, a soft force attacked, and Hao Taichung was firmly blocked, unable to take another step forward. Whose cultivation method is so profound that he is actually an earth immortal? Hao Taichung was startled. Suddenly, his brows furrowed. Is he here? He had condensed his blood and stopped his lifespan for many years. He actually came back to life. The founder of the Hong sect, Situ Shao, is here to pay respects to Master Kong. Suddenly, a warm voice sounded. A figure appeared in front of Jiang Tian out of thin air. The man was wearing a long green robe. His hair was tied up with a jade hairpin. He looked handsome and dashing. He looked like a scholar from the Qing dynasty who had traveled hundreds of years to come to this world. He did not have the slightest bit of aura, but he gave people a feeling that he was otherworldly and had the demeanor of an immortal. He looked like an immortal that had descended to the mortal world. It's the founder of the Hong sect, Situ Shao. Oh my God! He has come back to life. Hao Taichung, Li Jiuyo, Wolf Ancestor, and Zhou Zixuan were all shocked by Situ Zhao's arrival. Greetings, Senior Situ Shao. They bowed one after another, lowering their arrogant heads and performing a Taoist salute with reverence on their faces. Situ Zhao's status was too high. He was the founder of the Hong sect, an earth immortal, and the former #1 on the legendary roll. The Hong sect was as powerful as a country. In the history of Huaxia, the Tiandi gang, the Tiandi gang, and the Tiandi gang were all related to the Situ family. The Situ family was involved in all the major events that affected the course of history, and they even played an important role. Almost all of the famous Chinese societies in the world were founded by the disciples of the Hong sect or their descendants. Even during the founding ceremony, the descendant of Situ Shao, the leader of the Hong sect, Situ stood behind him. The lawyer of the Hong sect and Situ was none other than the famous Roosevelt. That was how powerful the Hong sect and the Situ family were, and how much influence they had in the world. You flatter me, fellow Taoists. Situ Shao returned the greetings one by one. He was very modest and considerate. As Situ Shao approached, Jiang Tian furrowed his brows and said, "You have a lifespan of over 300 years. You are even older than the wolf ancestor. However, you are just an ordinary human being. You don't have a powerful blood qi. Plus, you are just an earth immortal. Your lifespan is at most 200 years. How did you manage to survive?" "Master Kong, I am a dying man. I have been using the blood coagulation art to prolong my life. In fact, there are many other overlords like me who have managed to preserve their lifespan. They just haven't been born yet." Situ Shao shook his head with a wry smile. Then, his eyes widened as he looked at Jiang Tian with a half-smile. "People like Master Kong come from the outer space. They have the potential to become deities and immortals. I am so envious of them." "Hee, old man, you are so mean." Jiang Tian smiled and narrowed his eyes. "Do you want me to fall into the sea of people's war?" In fact, after hearing Situ Zhao's words, Hao Taichung, Li Jiuyo, Zhou Zixuan and the others looked at each other. They were so excited that their hands were shaking. Previously, they had suspected that Jiang Tian's cultivation art was from the ruins of immortality. Otherwise, it would not be so magical. It could make Jiang Tian stand at the top of the world and defeat many immortal cultivators in just a few years. However, they were not sure. After all, the legend of the ruins of immortality was very vague. Many people did not believe it. However, since Situ Shao said so, this matter was set in stone. At this time, they all had a common enemy. They wanted to capture Jiang Tian together and force him to tell them the cultivation art. "Fellow cultivator Jiang, since you don't deny it, I think my speculation is correct." A trace of excitement flashed across Situ Zhao's face. He stopped talking and used his psychic power to send a voice transmission. "After I was revived, I carefully studied all your information. I suspect that you are either a visitor from outer space or the reincarnation of an old demon immortal. You are definitely not an ordinary human being." "Why?" Jiang Tian asked with a half-smile. "Cultivation can be obtained through external means, whether it is through the accumulation of cultivation resources, the acquisition of ancient cultivation arts, or the forcible inheritance of immortals through the enlightenment method." Situ Zhao's eyes were as bright as torches. He still used his psychic power to send a voice transmission so that only Jiang Tian could hear. But a person's temperament and way of doing things can't. "Oh," Jiang Tian said lightly. "Master Kong even dares to fight against the superpowers of the world. He regards billions of immortals as ants and dust. He uses the superpowers as his chessboard and the common people as his chess pieces." Situ Shao said decisively. "You have cut off all emotions and hatred. Your temperament is extremely strong. It is as if nothing in the world can move you. How can a young man in his 20s have such a temperament? You must be an old monster who has lived for tens of thousands of years and has seen true gods and true immortals. You may even be a higher life form. Then you still dare to challenge me?" Jiang Tian looked at Situ Shao and was a little surprised. Just based on the fact that Situ Shao was able to guess his origin, he was far superior to other powerhouses. "Master Kong, I am only an earth immortal. The lifespan of an earth immortal is less than 300 years. If I hadn't stopped my lifespan for a few decades, I would have been a pile of dirt by now." Situ Zhao's eyes flashed with a touch of sadness. "I became an earth immortal 100 years ago. But in the following 30 years, my cultivation didn't improve at all. It was as if there was a layer of invisible but firm imprisonment that suppressed me and prevented me from moving forward." Looking at Jiang Tian, Situ Zhao's eyes gradually became excited. "But with Master Kang's arrival, it will be different. Perhaps a battle with Grandmaster Jiang will allow me to attain enlightenment in the Tao during battle, step into the heavenly immortal realm, and ascend." Could Jiang Tian's heart skipped a beat, and he said slowly with an appreciative expression, "Since returning to this world, I have met two people with excellent talents and temperaments. One is you, and the other is Zhang Qianlei. I will give you an opportunity. I can take you as my disciple." It could be said that Situ Zhao's talent was really high. His current cultivation was equivalent to that of a half-step foundation establishment cultivator. It was just that the cultivation method he practiced was too poor. Although his true qi was vigorous and surging, it was still true qi and could not be compared with true essence. However, it was very rare to be able to condense such a cultivation on this dead planet where spiritual qi was exhausted. It required great ambition, great perseverance, and great comprehension. If Situ Xiao entered the world of outer cultivators, his future would be limitless. More importantly, even though he knew that Jiang Tian was from outer space, Situ Xiao still had the desire to fight. To put it bluntly, in Situ Zhao's eyes, Jiang Tian was an alien. He was another kind of high-level life form whose power was unpredictable and full of unknowns. But Situ Xiao still wanted to fight. At this time, Situ Xiao showed an indomitable spirit and courage. His obsession to become stronger was what a cultivator needed the most, and also the most important thing. Therefore, Jiang Tian cherished talent and bestowed him with a stroke of good fortune. Jiang Tian's words were spoken directly. Hearing this, everyone was shocked and couldn't believe it. Jiang Tian was too crazy. He was seriously crazy. Situ Xiao was a real earth immortal, which was equivalent to the Sage King in the West. But Jiang Tian wanted to take him as his disciple. Just how condescending was this, looking down on the heroes of the world? He was almost ignorant. It was because he was ignorant that he was fearless. Taking an earth immortal as his disciple. Could it be that his cultivation was at the level of heaven immortal? This was something that had never happened before in history. Master Kong, don't be rash. You are absolutely no match for Wolf King, let alone an earth immortal. Quit while you're ahead and apologize. Anfia hurriedly persuaded him. She had a relationship with Jiang Tian. Her life was saved by Jiang Tian. She admired Jiang Tian very much and really didn't want Jiang Tian to court his own death. Master Kong, do you know what you are doing? Berezov and the others were anxious. Berezov was very disappointed in Jiang Tian. He had wanted to mediate for Jiang Tian for the sake of his daughter. But after Jiang Tian said this, even a deity couldn't save him. You have some ability, but he is a human immortal and an earth immortal. He is like a deity, not an ordinary human. Chapter 751. Thus, apologize. Otherwise, we'll make sure you die a horrible death. Song Shuangyan and the others from Beidasheng also shouted angrily. Apologize? Who in this world deserves my apology? Jiang Tian frowned and looked indifferent. He didn't even look at Anfia and the others. This made Anfia feel ashamed, angry, and resentful. How dare he ignore me? You're about to die and you still ignore me. Your Excellency Wolf King, this Master Kong is too good at causing trouble. You have to make a wise choice. Seeing that Jiang Tian couldn't be persuaded, Berezov and the other magnates said, You don't know Master Kang's ability. I swear to follow Master Kong until death. Wolf King smiled coldly. But in fact, Alessandro was putting up a strong front. Because he had no other choice. He had already shown his allegiance to Jiang Tian. Even if he returned to the wolf ancestor's side, the wolf ancestor wouldn't let him go. Since he was going to die anyway, he might as well fight to the end. Maybe he would still have a chance to live. From now on, our family will have nothing to do with your Excellency Wolf King and Master Kong. At this moment, Berezov and the other magnates had chosen to stand against Jiang Tian without any hesitation. A gentleman wouldn't stand under a collapsing wall. With the earth-level deities and a group of human-level deities, Jiang Tian would definitely die this time. They didn't want to be implicated. And these overlords would definitely deal with Jiang Tian's henchmen. Wolf King followed Jiang Tian, so they had to cut ties with him. I'm trying to persuade you, but you ignored me. You're really stubborn. Just pretend I never knew you. In the end, Anfia snorted angrily and left Jiang Tian's side, standing on the wolf ancestor's side. For a moment, behind Jiang Tian, there was only the Wolf King and a few moon-worshipping wolves. It was as if they had been abandoned by the entire world. Jiang Tian, look, even your friends have abandoned you. Don't you know the situation you're facing? Song Shuangyan said with a face full of ridicule, you really don't know what's good for you. Who do you think Situ Shao is? The ancestral master of the Hong sect is an earth-level deity, a real immortal. How dare you ask him to be your disciple? He has always been bold and arrogant. Bai Diqing also laughed mockingly. But in reality, they are nothing more than ants in the secular world, frogs at the bottom of a well. How could they know the vastness of the world, the brilliance of the sun and moon, and the vastness of the universe? Take Senior Situ as your disciple? You dare to say that? You're boasting shamelessly. Li Juyo laughed strangely, his face full of ridicule and disdain. A grain of rice dares to compete with the sun and moon. Not to mention being Senior Situ's master, you don't even have the qualifications to fight with Senior Situ. I can kill you with a raise of my hand. Hao Taichung revealed a ferocious look and laughed sinisterly. Senior Situ, as long as you give the order, I will slap him to death for you. The wolf ancestor also sneered and shook his head. Kong Teichu, you're courting death. How do you know how powerful Senior Situ is? Don't talk about Mr. Situ, I can kill you. Zhou Zixuan shook his head with a bitter smile and sighed regretfully. Kong Teichu was definitely a talented person, but unfortunately, he was too sharp and didn't know the principle that the strong were easy to break. Situ Shao shook his head and ignored the crowd. Instead, a trace of determination flashed in his eyes, and then he sent a message with his divine sense. Master Kong, I know you have good intentions. You should be qualified to be my master, but admitting defeat without a fight will greatly disturb my Dao heart. So, I must fight. But I want to fight with Master Kong alone and experience Master Kang's supreme cultivation technique. So, you should understand the grudges between you and them first. I will not interfere. Very well. Jiang Tian nodded at him, then flicked his sleeves, glanced at the crowd, and sneered. Hao Taichung, didn't you want to slap me to death? Come on. Didn't you all want to kill me? Then I also want to trample on you all and enjoy the sword vault alone. Then let's fight. Kong Teichu, you're too arrogant. The wolf ancestor's murderous intent was the strongest. He stood up and pulled out his mace from the snow and roared. You've offended me time and time again. Today, I'll kill you in front of everyone. I'll let you and the entire human race know that the Icefield Wolf clan is inviolable. He approached Jiang Tian and didn't forget to stare coldly at the wolf ancestor. Wolf ancestor, after I kill Kong Teichu, I'll settle the score with you and the entire Moon Wolf clan. You betrayed the wolf clan. Kong Teichu, do you have any last words? The wolf ancestor stood 100 meters away from Jiang Tian and sneered. Do you have any last words? Hurry up and say it, because you're going to die soon. Jiang Tian retorted. Mr. Jiang, you're courting death. You've offended God. Kneel down and surrender, or my family won't let you go. Berezov and the other oligarchs scolded harshly. Mr. Jiang, how dare you disrespect the wolf ancestor? This is a heinous crime. Why don't you apologize? Anfia hurriedly said. This was the best time to show their loyalty to the wolf ancestor. They all wanted to humiliate Jiang Tian to win the favor of the wolf ancestor and avoid being punished. Jiang Taichu, how dare you disrespect a deity? You'll be killed without mercy. Many Russian overlords and the werewolves of the glacier plain shouted. In the eyes of these Russian overlords, the wolf ancestor was the guardian of Russia during the Russian Empire and their biggest backer. He was very respected and was like a god. Kill Kong Teichu and let him die without a burial place. From now on, my family will worship the Icefield Wolf clan. Mai Ken's father jumped the highest and shouted. The pain of losing his son made him hate Jiang Tian to the core. He had completely betrayed the moon-worshipping Wolf King, so he had to shed all pretense of cordiality. Kong Teichu, who do you think you are talking to? However, the wolf ancestor laughed. His laughter was full of contempt and mockery. I have 300 years of life. I once drank with the Russian Tsar and defeated Napoleon's French expeditionary force. And kneel down and surrender. Blabber, blabber, don't you find it annoying that you're always like this? Jiang Tian mocked in disdain and attacked without holding back. Jiang Tian used a minor divine power he had learned when he reached the 8th level of Qi refinement. He swatted at the wolf ancestor as if he was swatting a fly. As the palm landed, a giant golden palm about 8 meters long appeared and enveloped the wolf ancestor with the weight of Mount Tai. This move, one hand covers the sky, was very magical. Each of the true essence particles was engraved with Tao runes and could easily crush a transcendent grandmaster. The particles formed talisman inscriptions and dharma laws, forming a powerful grand seal. What is this? The wolf ancestor was alarmed when he was enveloped by the divine power. He felt as if thousands of mountains were pressing down on him and he could not withstand the powerful force. What was even more terrifying was that he made a series of hand seals and his lips moved rapidly. However, he could not use any of his dharma spells. The spirit chi of heaven and earth in the area was sealed. The wolf ancestor had no choice but to use brute force to break the spell. He raised the mace with both hands and thrust it at the divine power. Lifting the mace was only a small movement, but the wolf ancestor was already exhausted. Blood oozed out from the corner of his mouth. The next second, boom, the mace exploded and the wolf ancestor was forced to kneel on the ground. In a blink, both of his knees cracked and blood gushed out. His head and waist were still bent over as if he was about to fall to the ground. Everyone was shocked by the development. What? The wolf ancestor can't even withstand a slap from him. And Fia exclaimed in disbelief. Many of the oligarchs turned pale and their hearts skipped a beat. That scene was too shocking. It was like a legend. He used a secret technique to seal the spirit chi of heaven and earth in that space. It's too terrifying, Zhou Zixuan exclaimed. Even Li Jiuyou and Hao Taichong were slightly moved. Their faces were solemn as they considered how to break the seal. Seals were secrets that were not passed on. Generally, they relied on array formations and needed to be set up in advance. For Jiang Tian to create a seal with a raise of his hand was simply like a legend. It was unbelievable. Under everyone's shocked gazes. You think you're amazing just because you drank with the Russian Tsar? Jiang Tian walked over lazily and slapped the wolf ancestor's face, shattering his cheeks. You think you're amazing just because you have 300 years of lifespan? Smith. Jiang Tian slapped him again. The other side of the wolf ancestor's face was also covered in blood, revealing his broken cheekbones and countless canine teeth. The pitiful wolf ancestor had roamed the Siberian tundra and the Arctic Circle, and had been invincible in Russia for hundreds of years. At this moment, he was like a little rabbit under the foot of a ferocious tiger, and he didn't have the slightest strength to struggle or resist, allowing Jiang Tian to trample and slaughter him. Call the wind and call the snow to kill 30,000 people? Why don't you show me? Jiang Tian slapped him again. Smith. The wolf ancestor's jaw was dislocated. Blood mixed with snot, teeth and minced meat dripped down. The wolf ancestor was in a sorry state at this time. Who gave you the courage to ask me to kneel down and surrender? Liang Jingru? Jiang Tian raised his leg and kicked him in the chest, sending him flying a few meters away. The wolf ancestor's sternum was caved in and blood was gushing out of his orifices. His lungs and leaves were coming out of his nostrils. He was barely breathing. How is this possible? Berezov, and Fia and the other oligarchs of the Russian secular world were stunned. Kong Taichu is so powerful. Many Russian masters were speechless. Their expressions seemed to be frozen and they became clay sculptures. They had thought that the wolf ancestor could kill Jiang Tian with a snap of his fingers, but Jiang Tian had defeated the wolf ancestor in seconds. Instant kill. Moreover, it was a one-sided beating and violence. It wasn't a battle between masters of equal strength. The wolf ancestor couldn't fight back at all. Many Russian overlords were shocked and their hearts almost jumped out of their throats. Many people were so scared that they couldn't stand still. That was the wolf ancestor. 300 years of life, powerful bloodline and profound dharma power. He killed 30,000 soldiers alone like a real god. Anyone who crosses this line will die. Why don't you kill me? Jiang Tian took a large step forward and crossed the line. He looked at the wolf ancestor with disdain and mocked. Chapter 752. Jiang Tian didn't stop. He arrived in front of wolf ancestor and stepped on his chest. The corner of his mouth curved into a disdainful smile as he glanced at everyone with a cold smile. God? How can a four-legged beast be the god of the Russians? You're all despicable. If he is a god, then everyone, what am I, the one who slays a god, considered? You want to kill me? Jiang Tian looked at Michael's father and sneered. I'm stepping on the wolf ancestor now. Do you still dare? Master Kong, I know I was wrong. Please spare my life. Michael's father knelt on the ground in fear. His heart almost exploded. He was filled with fear and regret. Even the wolf ancestor had been slapped to the ground. How could he have the strength and capital to challenge Jiang Tian? Jiang Tian snorted and didn't do anything. Maichen's father's body exploded, turning into countless pieces of translucent flesh and blood that scattered to the ground. Master Kong, please spare my life. I know I was wrong. I didn't recognize Mount Tai. Seeing this, Berezov and the other Russian oligarchs were all stunned. They knelt on the ground, trembling in fear. They didn't dare to raise their heads. At this moment, they were shocked, terrified, regretful, and wished for nothing more than to slap themselves a few times to vent their hatred. Why were they so shameless? They shouldn't have been so eager to show their loyalty. Even if they were a team, they shouldn't have stood on the wolf ancestor's side. Compared to Jiang Tian, the wolf ancestor was nothing. He was like a tiny ant in front of a prehistoric Tyrannosaurus rex. It could be said that Jiang Tian had this kind of power. As long as he wanted to kill them, no one could stop him. Even the Russian emperor would have to avoid him. And Fia also knelt on the ground, but she was the most regretful. Because she actually had the opportunity to follow Jiang Tian. After all, the wolf ancestor had been the middleman, and she had some ties with Jiang Tian. She had brought Jiang Tian on an adventure, and Jiang Tian had saved her life. It was a rare opportunity to face Snow Demon together. But she had forcefully destroyed it. Moreover, she had seen Jiang Tian defeat the Snow Demon with her own eyes. She should be the most aware of Jiang Tian's strength. However, the wolf ancestor was, after all, a terrifying existence in Russian legends. He was like a god, so the knowledge he had created a blind spot and shackled her thinking. It was too late to say anything now. She had missed it. Only the Wolf King Alexander straightened his body, his face full of excitement and exhilaration. It seemed that following Master Kong was a wise choice. Master Kong was too domineering. He was always full of surprises. With the death of the wolf ancestor and the annihilation of the Ice Plains wolf clan, he was now the strongest wolf clan in the entire world. Master Kong, spare my life. My clansmen and I are willing to submit to you and be your dogs and servants. The wolf ancestor finally recovered from its stupor and admitted defeat. This scene left many people dumbfounded. The wolf ancestor, who had once chatted happily with the Russian Tsar, was willing to be this person's lackey. If this spread out, who would believe it? It was like a myth. At this moment, they couldn't help but recall Jiang Tian's words, "A good dog doesn't block the way." When Jiang Tian said this, many people thought that Jiang Tian was crazy and didn't know what was good for him. But now, it seemed that Jiang Tian was right. The wolf ancestor actually bowed his head and was willing to be Jiang Tian's lackey. Begging for mercy was the rational choice, but the next moment, the wolf ancestor recklessly threatened. Master Kong, as you can see, I have a lot of clansmen. There are hundreds of Ice Plains wolves here. If you kill me, there are also some wolves wandering around the northern islands. You dare to threaten me? But you have some guts. Jiang Tian laughed out loud. I'll let you see with your own eyes how I kill all your clansmen with one sword strike. The next moment, Jiang Tian flicked his finger a few times. A whirlpool of blood floated out from the wolf ancestor's chest and formed a strange red talisman. Suddenly, hundreds of blood threads shot out in all directions from the talisman. Every single one of the dire field wolves was connected to each and every one of them. Some of them even shot into the depths of the heavens, and no one knew where they were going. Bloodline gravitational kill. Seeing this, a trace of fear and despair appeared on the wolf ancestor's face. Something like that. You know what's good for you. This is called the karmic severing curse. Jiang Tian said with a smile as he controlled the hundreds of red threads. The human body was full of mysteries. It was a treasure trove. The development of science and technology was the power that humans used to control and modify the outside world. Cultivation, on the other hand, was to stimulate the potential of the human body and condense all kinds of divine powers. There was a mysterious bloodline connection between humans and their kin, and they influenced each other. Some twins even had a mysterious telepathy that couldn't be explained. It was like quantum entanglement. And Jiang Tian's method was to use the blood connection between relatives to kill. Once the spell was cast, all the clansmen in the world who were related to the wolf ancestor would die. Master Kong, no. The wolf ancestor howled miserably, truly like the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves, miserable and shrill. Jiang Tian didn't care. He grabbed the blood talisman with his right hand and pulled it into his chest like a fisherman pulling in a net. Immediately, a few crystal-clear souls were pulled toward him, which vaguely resembled the dire wolf tribe. There were at least a few hundred of them. Some of them were very healthy and powerful. They roared and struggled angrily, kicking up snowflakes and breaking the ice. They wanted to break free from the blood threads. Everyone was terrified. The divine souls could affect reality. The masters of these divine souls were immortal state overlords. Some of the divine souls were weak and had been eroded by the wind and snow. They were distorted and blurry as they knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. At this time, many wolf servants and the Ice Plains wolf ancestor had fallen to the ground. They were motionless and had become cold corpses. In fact, 303 of the Ice Plains wolf ancestor that were related to the Ice Plains wolf ancestor had died in an instant. How could this be? The wolf ancestor was dumbfounded. His face was filled with despair. A strong sense of regret rushed to the top of his head and hot tears rolled down his cheeks. This was equivalent to the extinction of the entire Ice Plains wolf ancestor. Not a single one of them was left alive. This was an unacceptable defeat for the wolf ancestor. It was also an unbearable pain and regret. Even the 3 rivers and 5 seas couldn't wash away the pain and regret. What bullshit sword tomb? Whoever wants it can have it. I will not stay far away from it. If he could live his life again, he would never have provoked the devil Jiang Tian. Devil. He killed an entire clan from thousands of miles away without leaving a single one alive. He was simply a demon from hell. Go to hell. Jiang Tian waved his hand. A golden wave of fury surged through the sky, crushing the souls of the werewolves and sending them flying in all directions. This is the true annihilation of the Ice Plains wolf ancestor. Countless Russian overlords trembled. A strong sense of fear gripped their bodies and made it difficult for them to even breathe. Jiang Tian was too terrifying. He used his bloodline as a guide to capture the souls of the Ice Plains wolf ancestor. More importantly, he didn't kill ordinary people. The Ice Plains wolf ancestor had a powerful bloodline. Some of them even knew Dharma spells and were comparable to transcendent state warriors or even immortal state warriors. However, Jiang Tian still killed them as if they were flies. This was so shocking that it made people feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. I guess you think there's no point in living anymore. You're too lonely, right? Jiang Tian's eyes were cold as he kicked the wolf ancestor's chest. Boom! The wolf king's body exploded in an instant, turning into countless pieces of translucent flesh and blood that rained down like a rain of flesh. Everyone saw that the wolf ancestor's soul had also been destroyed by Jiang Tian. There was no chance of him being resurrected. The wolf ancestor was dead. Greetings, Master Kong. From now on, we'll be Master Kang's servants and won't do anything rash. Many Russian overlords, including the priests, grand magi and those who had awakened their physical bodies, rushed to kneel before Jiang Tian and kowtowed. The wolf ancestor could be said to be Russia's #1 hidden expert and also the world's #1 expert of the wolf clan. He had reached the level of immortal saint. Now, he was killed by Jiang Tian with a raise of his hand. Who would be a match for him? Who would dare to cause trouble? They were so scared that their souls were about to leave their bodies and they trembled. They were afraid that Jiang Tian would kill them if they were too slow. As for the oligarchs like Berezov, there was no need to mention them. In front of such a peerless overlord who had killed the wolf ancestor, their wealth, power and reputation were nothing. Even if the Emperor of Russia was here, Jiang Tian would be able to kill him easily. Deal with the outside first, then deal with the inside. Jiang Tian kicked away a part of the wolf ancestor's body, and then his cold and indifferent gaze descended onto Hao Taichung, Li Jiuyo, Zhou Zishuan, and the others. He grinned. Now it's your turn. Jiang Tian, do you think you're qualified to compete with my overlord just because you killed the wolf ancestor? You're courting death. Bai Diqing's expression changed several times. Then he snorted and said arrogantly, do you know that 100 years ago, Master Hao was the most powerful swordsman at the end of the Qing dynasty and defeated the wolf ancestor of the north? If you know what's good for you, kneel down and beg for mercy. Kowtow to us 3 times and 9 times and call us your overlord. Then, maybe my overlord will spare your life. Bai Diqing hated Jiang Tian to the bone. He wanted nothing more than to eat Jiang Tian's flesh and skin. Only by grinding his bones and scattering his ashes would he be able to vent his hatred. He was the eldest son of the Bai family, the most powerful martial arts family in Yanjin and the leader of the Condor team. He was very influential both in Huaxia and in the secular world. He came from a famous family and lived a life of luxury and luxury. He was a powerful young grandmaster and was in charge of the Condor team. He had unparalleled power and a bright future. He was powerful in the entire Huaxia and even had the potential to replace Yi Zhantian. But all of this was ruined by Jiang Tian. The Bai family was destroyed and Bai Tianlei and Hao Hongmei were killed. The Bai family, a powerful martial arts family, was defeated and removed from Huaxia in one night. His cultivation was destroyed and the Condor team was disbanded. After he was exiled overseas, he lived a precarious life like a stray dog. He only dared to return to his country when Hao Taichung came out of seclusion. How can we spare his life? Today he must die. At most, we can only leave his body intact. Song Shuangyan was beautiful and had an ethereal temperament. However, her voice was cold and vicious. We can't let the entire Jiang family go. Every one of them must die. Let's destroy the Taiching sect and take their dojo and country. We'll turn Sidoni into the dojo of the Amei sword sect. Chapter 753. Jiang Tian chuckled. Song Shuangyan, do you know why I spared your life? You think I didn't dare to kill you in Yanjin? No, I want to kill you. Who can stop me? I asked you to lure Hao Taichung out. What do you mean? How dare you spout such arrogant words? Do you know that sect leader Hao is half a step away from Earth-level deity? He can kill you with one finger. Kneel down and apologize. Bai Diqing and Song Shuangyan were enraged. Their faces turned red as they shouted at the same time. In their eyes, Hao Taichung was like a god. How could they allow Jiang Tian to blaspheme him? Song Shuang, you really jinxed your husband. Luckily, I abandoned you in time. Jiang Tian smiled faintly and suddenly pointed at White Emperor City. Bang! Bai Diqing's head exploded. Blood gushed out and his headless body fell to the ground. You died because you talked too much. Jiang Tian laughed disdainfully. I don't even want to kill this kind of ant. But I don't want to let him go. Then, Jiang Tian looked at Song Shuangyan and said calmly, Look, I said you jinxed your husband and you really did it. Jiang Tian, you devil. You will die a horrible death. Song Shuangyan was stunned at first. Then, she was so angry that her face turned green. She hated Jiang Tian to the core. Tears streamed down her face and she clenched her teeth. She was in so much pain that she couldn't get over it for a long time. Now, she and Bai Diqing had gotten to know each other, and they were in love with each other. They were just about to get along well with each other, yet in just a few days, she was killed by Jiang Tian. "Master, why didn't you stop him?" Song Shuangyin grabbed Hao Taichung's arm and felt wronged. "How could I just watch Bai Diqing get killed? He is your great-great-grandson. Who would have thought that he would actually attack a junior? How despicable! He has lost the bearing of an expert." Hao Taichung's face was slightly embarrassed, and then he angrily scolded. How could he not have expected Jiang Tian to make a move? How could Jiang Tian let an ant like Bai Diqing off with such a cheap mouth go? In fact, Hao Taichung had also stopped him. He had attacked 3 times in an instant, using spells, martial arts, and swordsmanship in an attempt to block Jiang Tian's finger light. However, it was completely useless. Jiang Tian had broken through it all the same, and White Emperor Cheng had been killed right under his nose. To Hao Taichung, heartache was secondary. After all, he was an expert who had bitterly cultivated for 100 years. He had long since severed his emotions and desires. He had transcended the mortal world and was close to being inhuman. He viewed blood relations as insignificant. Otherwise, how could he concentrate on cultivating bitterly and pursue the supreme great Tao if he was bound by emotions? However, he was extremely angry. His great-great-grandson was killed right under his nose. That was a slap to his face. It was a humiliation that he could not bear. Who was Jiang Tian? An itinerant cultivator who rose to prominence in the secular world. In the eyes of the semi-hidden sects, itinerant cultivators in the secular world were ants and dust. They had low statuses and were not worth mentioning. Who was he? He was the leader of the Amei sword sect. Amei was the orthodox Taoist sect and was almost on par with Kunlun. As the leader of such a famous sect, he could only watch helplessly as his descendant was killed. If this matter were to spread, he would be the biggest laughingstock in the semi-hidden sections. He would go down in infamy for 10,000 years. "Kong Teichu, today I will kill you." Hao Taichung's eyes widened in anger. He roared loudly like a thunderclap and attacked directly. Boom! He took a step forward. With just one step, he was like a ferocious tiger, with endless power and lingering charm. Boom! He leaped 100 meters into the air and stood in midair. He suddenly stretched out his arm like a dragon emerging from the sea. He grabbed lightly and roared, "Innate Qi, great dragon-catching hand." Instantly, a giant palm that was 10 meters long condensed out of thin air. It was covered with dense scales as if it was made of steel. Its fingernails were like bone hooks, and it clawed at Jiang Tian. This is the secret art created by the founder of the Amei sect, the White Brow Immortal. It can capture dragons and tigers, kill demons and eliminate monsters. It's really terrifying. Zhou Zixuan was shocked by the sight and sighed at his own inferiority. Although the Amei sect focused on sword cultivation, as a large sect that had lasted for thousands of years, its foundation was too profound. All kinds of Xian sect internal arts, fist arts, palm arts, and body arts were powerful and far superior to those of ordinary sections. The great dragon-catching hand swept across the sky. Wherever it passed, huge rocks collapsed and clouds flew into the sky. With the long tassel in his hand, he seemed to be able to catch turtles in the 5 seas and capture the moon in the 9 heavens. Many Russian overlords retreated, fearing that they would be implicated. A senior magus, who was as powerful as a transcendent magus, was only a little bit slower than Ji Hao, and was crushed into pieces by Ji Hao's dragon-catching hand. This Khanate Qi great dragon-catching hand has reached 90% completion. Seeing this, even Li Juyo was moved. He thought that it would take him some effort to break this move. 8,000 years ago, the White Brow Immortal caught a real dragon in the Min River with this great dragon-catching hand. Song Shuangyin raised her chin and looked at Jiang Tian with disdain, as if he were already a dead man. She mocked him as much as she could, as if she was the one who had used the great dragon-catching hand. "Jiang Tian, you're just an ant in the mortal world. You don't know the vastness of the world and the power of the dragon. You want to fight with my master? You want to compete with the sun and the moon? You must be tired of living. Really? Jiang Tian sneered and pointed in the air. Freeze. As Jiang Tian finished speaking, the mighty great dragon capturing hand was actually frozen there, motionless, as if it was dead. What's going on? Song Shuangyan's gloating smile froze on her face. Her eyes were filled with horror as if she had seen a ghost. How is this possible? Hao Taichung was dumbstruck. His heart was thumping with fear. His feet slanted and he almost fell. The Khanate Chi Great Dragon Catching Hand was the trump card of the Amei Sword sect. At his level, he could crush tanks and destroy mountains. It contained a powerful force and profound Dharma power. Hao Taichung was confident that he could kill a man deity with one hand. But he didn't expect that Jiang Tian could freeze it with only one word. That was incredible. He couldn't even understand what Dharma access Jiang Tian had used. That was not the way to play the game, okay? Half-step to Earth deity. So what? Jiang Tian stepped on the air and suddenly disappeared from everyone's sight. The next moment, he appeared in front of Hao Taichung like a ghost. That's too fast. Can he break the sound barrier? A Russian powerhouse exclaimed. That's not breaking the sound barrier. The faster the body is, the more turbulent the airflow will be. But there's no turbulence at all. Zhou Zishuan broke out in a cold sweat as he watched. His face was already deathly pale. Could it be that Jiang Taichu was using the spatial manipulation divine art that allowed him to shrink space into an inch? I have to retreat. Hao Taichung had realized how terrifying Jiang Tian was. He wanted to distance himself and use the art of Shu Mountain. Why can't I move? Did he use some kind of restriction spell? But he found that no matter how hard he tried, the essence chi of heaven and earth remained motionless. He couldn't move at all, as if he had fallen into cement. Is the semi-hidden sect that great? Slap. Jiang Tian smiled disdainfully and slapped Hao Taichung's face, causing blood to spurt out from his nose. Konggachu. Hao Taichung's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He was the sect master of Mount Amei, a grand master of the semi-hidden sect, respected by thousands of people. And yet, he had been slapped by Jiang Tian. That was a great humiliation. It was worse than his mother being humiliated by Jiang Tian. Another slap. Everyone exclaimed and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Mr. Jiang loved to slap people's faces. He had slapped the wolf ancestor before, but now it was Hao Taichung's turn. Wolf King Alexander, Zhou Zishuan, Li Jiuyo, and the others were shocked. Only those who had reached their level and surpassed the immortal state warriors knew what Jiang Tian's action meant. Was Hao Taichung a weakling? Didn't he have any means? If they thought so, they would be stupid and a big joke. He was a half-step human deity who controlled the sect and had thousands of Dharma spells at his fingertips. He could destroy mountains and cities with one slash. But at that moment, he couldn't use any of his means. That meant that the restriction created by Jiang Tian had completely isolated and imprisoned the spirit chi of heaven and earth in that area. It was like removing the firewood from the bottom of a cauldron, restraining all Dharma spells. That was too terrifying. It was terrifying. No matter how many means you had, without the spirit chi of heaven and earth, you couldn't use any Dharma spells. Kong Teichu is too powerful. I'm afraid the old man is no match for him. He's too weak. Zhou Zishuan shook his head regretfully, feeling sad and dispirited. He had just become a human deity and was full of passion and ambition. But at that moment, all of it turned into cold sweat. I didn't expect such an expert to rise in the mortal world. We are no match for him, no match for him. Beside him, Liang Zichen and the other 4 elders were also dumbfounded, and a chill ran down their spines. Especially Liang Zichen. Back then, he wanted to take revenge for the many disciples of Dian Cong who had died in the hands of Jiang Tian on Mount Everest. Now it seemed that revenge was useless. If he rushed up, he would be instantly killed by Jiang Tian. At that moment, even the earth deity Sidu Shao was shocked. He frowned and his heart was in turmoil. Jiang Tian had once killed his disciple Sidu Yuanhao in the ancient womb. Of course, he knew how powerful Jiang Tian was. He was at least stronger than a human deity. The peak of the worldly immortal realm, he felt that he had already overestimated Jiang Tian. After all, Jiang Tian was too young. Even if he was a visitor from outer space, there were too few resources on Earth. It was very difficult for him to cultivate to the human deity realm. But now, he found that Jiang Tian was even more powerful than he had imagined. He was unfathomable. What about you? Sect leader of Amei, the #1 swordsman in the late Qing dynasty? Show me how shameless you are. Jiang Tian slapped him again. Chapter 754. Clang. The sound was like the evening drum and morning bell. It was not crisp, but the sound of metal and stone colliding. This was Hao Taichung summoning the astral wind to strengthen his body. He wanted to resist Jiang Tian's attack. Under the loud noise, a small hill under their feet was shattered. Among the flying snow and ice, countless boulders were blasted dozens of meters away. Ouch! Only then did the crowd realize the danger of the battle. This was simply destructive. Even though Hao Taichung summoned a gust of wind and activated his protective divine art, half of his face was still cracked by Jiang Tian's palm strike, and a few of his teeth, which were as sharp as swords, flew out. His steel-like beard was covered in blood. Do you admit defeat? Jiang Tian sneered mockingly. Aren't you very powerful? Show me what you're made of. Jiang Tian's tongue was vicious. You talk about the righteous sects and Mount Amei. You talk about me, Kong Teichu, as an ant. Who is the ant now? Righteous sects and 1,000-year-old Mount Amei. What's so great about the sect leader? You're still letting me slap you. But your skin is a little thicker. You have the astral wind to protect your face. How can it not be thick? At this time, Song Lingshuang was stunned. Her stable worldview was about to collapse. She had never thought that the worthless Jiang Tian would be so powerful that he could slap Hao Taichung. After entering Mount Shuamei, she had heard too many stories about Hao Taichung. He was the instructor of the imperial bodyguards of the Guangxu Emperor. He once dominated Huaxia with one sword. He defeated immortal state grandmasters consecutively. He was known as the top swordsman of the Qing dynasty. In her heart, Hao Taichung was like a legend. He was powerful and unattainable. But in front of Jiang Tian, Hao Taichung was like a 3-year-old child facing Tyson. He was tortured and humiliated by Jiang Tian. I don't admit defeat. With his face covered in blood, Hao Taichung's originally ugly face became even more hideous and terrifying. He gnashed his teeth in anger. His hatred for Jiang Tian was monstrous. You've sealed my technique, so I can't use my Mount Shu sword art. If we fight, I may not lose to you. From his point of view, what he said was naturally correct. The sword Xiu of Amei was famous throughout the world. Even though they were not as powerful as the flying swords of Kunlun, they still had many sword techniques such as the art of controlling the sword. These sword techniques were all specialized in long-range attacks. Jiang Tian's mana was strong, but he might not be able to restrict the spiritual qi of heaven and earth on a large scale. He still had the advantage. All right, your grandpa Jiang specializes in dealing with all kinds of disobedience. I'll give you a chance to display your Amei swordsmanship. Jiang Tian smiled contemptuously and kicked Hao Taichung in the chest. Whoosh! Hao Taichung was like a human cannonball. After flying for a kilometer, it smashed into a small mountain and fell into rolling boulders and snow. The entire area was dead silent. No one came back to their senses and looked at the snow and rocks in silence. Motherfucker, he was beaten even worse than a dog. A moment later, there was a loud bang. A crimson shadow broke through the snow and rocks and tore open the sky like a missile launched from a missile. Damn you, Heavenly Lord. Today, I'm going to tear you into pieces, Kong Teichu. Hao Taichung shouted at the top of his lungs. His voice was like rolling thunder, spreading out for dozens of miles, shaking countless icebergs within a radius of a few kilometers, causing the earth to quake and mountains to shake. Hao Taichung was too angry. His lungs were about to explode. He was a half-step earth-level deity, the sect master of Amei, and he had been slapped in the face. Clink. He gritted his teeth and slapped the back of his head. A 3-inch crimson sword flew out from a cloud of blood mist. The small sword expanded in the wind and suddenly turned into a streak of red light. It swept across the sky and shot toward Jiang Tian. Blood Divine Sword. He has mastered the unique skill of the Amei Sword Sect, Blood Divine Sword. Zhou Zixuan shouted in horror. How Taichung has lost his mind facing an overlord like Kong Taichu. Li Jiuyo shook his head and sighed. His face was full of sorrow. The Blood God Sword was actually similar to Sita Yuanhao's Blood Condensation Magic Sword, but it was even stronger. The Blood Divine Sword was also a sword nourished by the blood essence of one's cultivation. Once it was activated, it would gather all of one's cultivation and form an attack that could destroy the world. But the most powerful part of it was the word, divine. When the owner infused part of his soul energy into the Blood Divine Sword, the sword would be like a quasi-spiritual artifact or even a spiritual artifact. The precision and ingenuity of the attack would be increased, making it impossible to defend against. However, the drawbacks were not small. Once it was used, it would be very harmful to Sun Hao's blood essence and soul energy. Cover the sky with one hand, seal thousands of miles. Facing this ferocious sword, Jiang Tian laughed mockingly and let out a low shout. In an instant, there was silence around Hao Taichung. Everything stopped. At this moment, one could clearly see that the hilt of the small sword was still in its original shape. At the back of the hilt, there were bloodlines that were connected to Hao Taichung's acupoints and meridians. And the body of the sword had turned into extremely sharp blood-red lights. These lights were crystal clear, like melted red agate threads. There were thousands of them, densely packed, and they were more than a few hundred meters long. They meandered forward like the tentacles of a mollusk, giving people a feeling that they were alive. But these blood-red lights were extremely sharp. Each one of them could kill an immortal state warrior, pierce through gold and stone, and cut through everything. Many blood-red lights pierced toward Jiang Tian together, forming a blood-red chain. These bloodlines are a little interesting. Jiang Tian took a step forward and directly arrived in front of Hao Taichung. He flicked the blood-colored light with his finger, and it actually emitted a crisp sound, as if he was knocking on glass. Hao Taichung, are you convinced now? Jiang Tian's eyes were cold and he sneered. I'm convinced. I'm willing to give you the map of the ruins of immortality. Hao Taichung's body was confined. Only his eyes could move. His tongue was stiff and he looked terrified. If he could move, he would have kowtowed to Jiang Tian and begged for mercy. At this time, everyone was shocked and couldn't believe it. Half a step to Earth immortal. The leader of the Amei Sword Sect. But he was still trampled by Jiang Tian. This was incredible. If this news spread, it would shock the world. Are you convinced? Jiang Tian sneered and said, unfortunately, it's too late. Jiang Tian's 5 fingers were like hooks. He grabbed Hao Taichung's head and searched his mind with his divine sense. After finding the information he wanted, Jiang Tian pulled out Hao Taichung's head along with his spine. Who's still not convinced? Come up. Jiang Tian threw the bloody head and spine onto the ground, then stomped Hao Taichung's corpse into pieces and turned it into a pile of mush. After that, he swept the crowd with his gaze and shouted in a stern voice. Seeing this, Song Shuangyan was so shocked that her whole body trembled. She fell to the ground and her legs were so weak that she couldn't stand up. Hao Taichung was defeated and dead. If Jiang Tian wanted to kill her, who in the world could stop him? Hao Taichung was dead. Who in the world could be Jiang Tian's opponent? Perhaps only Lin Qingyang, the leader of Kunlun, and Yi Tianren and a few other powerful people in Hongmeng could. But they were all reclusive people. The point was, if Jiang Tian wanted to kill her, no one could stop him. Alas, as expected of the national hunter, as expected of an earth immortal. This old man concedes defeat. At this time, Zhou Zixuan's face was full of shock. Then, it turned into endless decadence. He bowed deeply to Jiang Tian to show his respect. In the face of Jiang Tian's power, he was completely desperate and didn't have the courage to fight. Master Kong, this old man concedes defeat. Even the arrogant Li Juyo was afraid and uneasy at this time. He didn't have the confidence to fight with Jiang Tian. Hao Taichung was a half-step Earth immortal, and he was only at the peak of the human immortal. Hao Taichung was crushed by Jiang Tian. He didn't have much chance of winning. Zhou Zixuan, didn't you ask me to kowtow and admit my mistake? Who gave you the right to do so? Jiang Tian stepped in the air and came to Zhou Zixuan. He raised his hand and slapped him. Zhou Zixuan was slapped to the ground and his face was red. He was angry, but the next moment he suppressed his anger and lowered his head. At the moment when Jiang Tian slapped him, he tried to dodge and use his secret skill to block, but he couldn't. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth around him was still confined by Jiang Tian's hand. He had no chance to resist at all. It could be said that if he showed the slightest dissatisfaction, he could only be crushed by Jiang Tian. Is Dian Song so great? The sect leader is here, Liang Zichen and the other 5 elders are also here. If you have the guts, fight with me. Jiang Tian kicked Zhou Zixuan in the chest and made him roll on the ground. Then, he slapped Liang Zichen and the other 4 elders to the ground. Master Kong, we don't dare. Grandmaster Jiang, please quell your anger and spare our lives. In the face of such humiliation, Zhou Zixuan, Liang Zichen and the others didn't even dare to refute. Instead, they knelt down in front of Jiang Tian and kept kowtowing to beg for mercy. Li Juyo? Where the plum blossoms pass, not a blade of grass grows. Fierce ghosts dominate the 9 nether? Jiang Tian came to Li Juyo again and raised his hand to slap him a few times. Master Kong, I don't dare. How dare an old man in front of you? Please spare the old man's life. Li Juyo was beaten until he screamed miserably. Blood spurted out of his nose and his teeth flew out. Master Kong, please stop hitting me. If you hit me again, I will be finished. He knelt on the ground, put his hands up in front of his chest, and swayed quickly, begging for mercy. He was terrified. After Jiang Tian slapped him, his cultivation was suppressed a little. After a few slaps, his cultivation fell continuously. Now he was about to fall to the divine realm. This was too terrible. You are quite famous. Suppress the 9 underworlds? Why don't you show me how you suppress the 9 underworlds? Jiang Tian kicked him in the chest and shouted coldly, why don't you show me how you're suppressing me? Li Juyo was kicked until blood spurted out of his mouth. He flew hundreds of meters away like a golf ball. You called me an ant. Now you know who the ant is, right? Jiang Tian was not going to let him off after gaining the upper hand. He kicked him again, sending him rolling far away. I'm an ant, I'm a bug. Master Kong, please stop hitting me. I'm convinced, I'm really convinced. Li Juyo was lying on the ground like a dead dog. He was covered in blood and his hair was disheveled. Everyone was dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. Li Juyo was at the peak of the human immortal realm and the sect leader of the Tianshan sect. No one dared to provoke him in the whole northwest of Huaxia. But Jiang Tian was beating him like a stray dog. This was like child's play. Chapter 755. You want to kill me and force me to hand over my cultivation method? What a joke. You really don't know who you are. Jiang Tian was disdainful and said with a mocking expression, the person who can snatch my cultivation technique has not been born yet. For a moment, there was a dead silence. No one dared to say a word. They just knelt on the ground and looked at Jiang Tian in horror. At this time, Song Shuangyin was scared out of her wits and subconsciously wanted to escape. However, she suddenly found that she couldn't move at all, as if she had been immobilized. Jiangtin, what did you do to me? Song Shuangyin was trembling with fear and screamed in a sobbing voice. After I finish this fight, I will settle accounts with you. Jiang Tian smiled coldly and then ignored her. His fighting spirit was rising steadily. He looked at Situ Shao and said, Fellow Cultivator Su, today, only you are qualified to make me fight with you. Let's fight. If Jiang Tian had said this before this fight, everyone would have thought that he was talking nonsense. They would have snorted at him and scolded him for boasting shamelessly. But now, Jiang Tian had suppressed the wolf ancestor with a raise of his hand, killed Hao Taichung with a flick of his finger, and slapped Zhou Zixuan and Li Jiuyo. All of them were shocked and terrified, and they felt that Jiang Tian's words were completely natural. Situ Zhao's face turned solemn as he cupped his fists and bowed. His face was full of reverence as he said, "I, Situ Zhao, seek Grandmaster Zhang's guidance. Sorry to offend you." As soon as he said that, the whole place became silent. Everyone's faces were filled with excitement and shock. Jiang Tian was known as Earth Immortal Jiang, and Situ Zhao was said to have stepped into the Earth Immortal realm as early as the end of the Qing dynasty. An Earth Immortal was a figure that only appeared in legends. They were almost like legends. Today, two Earth Immortals were about to fight. If news of this got out, it would definitely shake the world. This was just too exciting. This battle was an exchange of pointers, a contest, a showdown between the two strongest people on this planet, but at the same time, it would also determine the ownership and control of the Sword Tomb. As for the Sword Tomb, it was rumored that it was the place where a celestial immortal had fallen. After entering, no matter if it was Jiang Tian or Situ Zhao, both of them would obtain boundless resources and fortuitous encounters as resources to advance into the heavenly immortal realm. After this battle, a celestial immortal would definitely be born. The battle between earthly immortals is finally about to break out. There hasn't been such a battle in the past 500 years. I didn't expect that I would be able to witness such a brilliant battle in this age of chaos. This trip was not in vain. That's right, it's an unprecedentedly brilliant battle. Meanwhile, Zhou Zixuan, Li Jiuyo, and the other experts were looking forward to it. Their hands were trembling slightly. This battle was more brilliant than the battle between Jiang Tian and Zhang Qianlei, compared to the battle between Jiang Tian and Dong Bing and the Blue Storm. This was a battle between earthly immortals. A battle between earthly immortals and holy kings had not happened in the past few hundred years. Even if it had happened before, no one had witnessed it with their own eyes. There were only some unfounded legends. To these experts, watching such a battle was a great fortuitous encounter. Those human immortals could even go one step further and step into the half-step earthly immortal realm. Jiang Tian and Situ Zhao stood face to face with a distance of 1 mile between them. However, neither of them made a move. It seemed that they were accumulating their strength and waiting for something. In the wind and snow, the two tall and majestic figures were like two lofty and steep mountains in the eyes of the crowd. They were unforgettable and filled with reverence. At this time, all the experts began to retreat outside the circle. Originally, they were about 1 kilometer away from Jiang Tian. Now, they retreated more than 10 miles and stood on a snowy mountain, watching with binoculars. Hao Taichung, a half-step earthly immortal, could destroy a city and a mountain with a sword. When earthly immortals fought, it was terrifying and full of destructive power. Most likely, all living things within a radius of 10 miles would be annihilated without any chance of survival. Under Jiang Tian's divine sense, they also took Song Shuangyan away. Of course, her range of movement was restricted by Jiang Tian's secret method, so there was no way she could escape. "Master Kong, I'm going to make a move. I hope you won't hold back and fight with me with all your strength." Suddenly, Situ Zhao said seriously. In an instant, there was a rumbling sound. In the thunderous sound, a surge of murderous aura surged into the sky. Murderous thunder. This murderous aura was not genuine qi, but pure invisible spiritual energy and willpower. However, it was like a fire beacon, soaring into the sky as high as 300 meters, tearing through the wind and snow. What a terrifying murderous aura! Zhou Zixuan was frightened and looked up. With this point alone, Situ Zhao was far superior to Hao Taichung. When an earthly immortal is angry, his murderous aura will cover the sky as high as 300 meters. The muscles in the corners of his eyes were trembling. Compared with Situ Zhao, who was full of murderous aura and had a calm face but a thunderstorm in his heart, Hao Taichung was like a 3-year-old brat who squeaked. Situ Zhao fought against the Qing dynasty and restored the Ming dynasty. It is said that he killed 50,000 Qing soldiers with one sword. Li Jiuyo's face was also full of fear and solemnity. He said bitterly, "This murderous aura can only be cultivated by killing tens of thousands of people." He was famous for his fierceness and was said to be able to frighten the ghosts in the 9 serenities. However, compared with Situ Zhao's murderous aura, his murderous aura was just like playing house. It was not worth mentioning. The other powerhouses were all shocked and excited. The scene in front of them was too shocking. Jiang Tian will die, right? He must die, he must die. This is Situ Zhao. Who can compare with his murderous aura? Look at Jiang Tian, he has no murderous aura at all. Weakling. Song Shuangyan's beautiful face lost all color. Her mouth was muttering incantations as she crazily cursed Jiang Tian. She was also comforting herself, hoping that Situ Zhao would kill Jiang Tian. In the field, Jiang Tian's expression did not change. He said calmly, "Situ Zhao, the greatest respect for an opponent is to fight with all your strength and not hold back. Don't worry. I respect you, so I will not be polite. Good. I have not met a worthy opponent for 300 years. My life is lonely and I am as lonely as a living dead. Today, it is my great fortune to have a martial arts competition with a peerless powerhouse like Master Kong." Situ Zhao smiled with emotion. He was heroic and generous. He had the air of a scholarly hero from ancient times. He suddenly made his move. Clang. He directly punched out. This punch was not fancy at all. It was simple and direct, like a retired old man practicing boxing in the park. It had a sense of returning to simplicity. But there was a loud bang. The void cracked. A big hole was torn in the 1-mile area between Jiang Tian and Situ Zhao, and it became a vacuum. The flying snow, which was originally like catkins, burst out like shrapnel after being hit by the violent punch. It pierced many small holes in the solid ice and the ground. The surging and vast genuine qi formed a transparent fist, which was the size of a millstone. It pulled a white turbulence in the air, and it was like a high-speed train. Wherever the giant fist passed, a deep hole was plowed in the ground. Countless boulders were shattered, like a string of firecrackers. To it, Jiang Tian just flicked his finger. Clang. The golden light flickered, and a finger light condensed from the 7th metal true essence appeared in the shape of a golden sword. The golden sword was engraved with ancient Tao patterns. It shone brightly and was 10 meters long. It was like a missile that pierced through the sky and pierced toward the giant fist. Boom! The genuine qi giant fist was penetrated, and then it exploded uncontrollably. A huge mushroom cloud rose into the sky, and the aurora in the sky was shaken and distorted. The battle was like a nuclear explosion, earth-shattering. Within a few miles of the surrounding area, the ground trembled violently, and a snow mountain hundreds of meters high collapsed directly, and some were shaved off. Countless ice, boulders, and snowflakes were thrown away, mixed in the billowing air waves, drifting and lashing out into the distance. Even if the spectators were separated by 5 kilometers, they still felt a scorching heat, and they were thrown off their feet by the waves of air. The ground beneath their feet shook intensely like the skin of a drum, and they couldn't even stand stably. Oh my God! It's terrible! This is definitely beyond the power of a strategic missile. A Russian mixed martial arts master exclaimed. His face turned pale and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. An Earth-level deity was too powerful. Fortunately, they had run far away, otherwise, they would have been crushed. The Wolf King's forehead was also covered in cold sweat. Jiang Tian's power was too terrifying. If he fought with him, he wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. So this is the power of an Earth-level deity. Its destructive power! Zhou Zishuan exclaimed. An Earth-level deity. Except for the superpowers, the armies of ordinary countries are powerless. Li Jiuyo exclaimed. Then, a figure rose to the sky like a dragon and reached 400 meters high. It was Situ Zhao. If one looked closely, they would find that there was a big hole in his shirt under his ribs and there were mottled blood stains. It seemed that he had suffered a minor injury. Who's the winner of this round? Could it be that Mr. Jiang has fallen? And Fia exclaimed. No one could see clearly in that area. And Fia and the others stood on tiptoe and looked curiously. He must be dead. Who can withstand such a powerful punch? Song Shuangyan gritted her teeth and gloated. But then her smile froze. Kong Teichu is stronger. Li Jiuyo rolled his eyes and said with difficulty. He only flicked his finger, but he broke Situ Zhao's punch. And, it seems that Situ Zhao is injured. He can hurt an earth-level deity. What kind of cultivation art does Master Kong practice? Zhou Zishuan exclaimed. That's impossible. How could Situ Zhao be inferior to an ant like him? Song Shuangyan was unwilling to admit defeat. She waved her hands and screamed hysterically. An earth-level deity's body was as tough as diamond. It was no longer a mortal body. It was impervious to fire and water and could withstand artillery fire and even missiles. Their bodies wouldn't rot after 100 years. And yet, he was injured by Jiang Tian's finger? That was unbelievable. She didn't know that Jiang Tian's golden finger aura was so sharp that it could cut through anything in the world. It also contained Dao patterns. No matter how many divine powers Situ Zhao had, they were all dissolved in an instant. Chapter 756. Master Kong, I'm no match for you in terms of energy and cultivation. Situ Zhao stood in the sky, his robe fluttering in the wind like an immortal. He shook his head regretfully and his face was full of fear. In fact, Situ Zhao was indeed injured. Jiang Tian's sword-shaped finger aura didn't lose its momentum after breaking the giant fist. It still pierced towards Situ Zhao sharply. Situ Zhao used 3 kinds of powerful body techniques and footwork to dodge the attack, but his clothes were still cut open, and an inch-long wound appeared below his ribs. You have a good eye. The next moment, Jiang Tian crossed 100 meters with his hands behind his back as if he was stepping on an invisible staircase. He only needed 4 steps to reach the sky. He's really not dead. How can he be so strong? Song Shuangyan was disappointed and stomped her feet angrily. In the sky, Situ Zhao's eyes lit up and he praised leisurely. Grandmaster Zhang's aura is sometimes ethereal, like smoke and fog, and sometimes heavy, like Vajra dark steel. It can be said that hardness and gentleness complement each other, with endless changes. I have never seen such a miraculous aura in my 300 years. Situ Zhao, you're also talented but unfortunately, you're cultivating a small Dao. Compared to my supreme Dao, you're too far away. Jiang Tian sighed. That was true. Situ Zhao's innate talent was extraordinary. He had both perseverance and perception. If he was in the cultivation world, he would have broken through to the foundation establishment stage or even the golden core stage with many cultivation resources such as cultivation techniques, great medicines, and divine herbs. However, even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. The spirit chi on Earth had already declined and it had become a dead planet. Many cultivation arts had been cut off. Without resources, Situ Zhao could only stop there. Alas, I know I can't win, but I still have to fight. Situ Zhao sighed and said slowly, Master Kong, I fell into the Jialing River more than 200 years ago. By chance, I obtained a set of sword techniques engraved in a coffin. Gradually, Situ Zhao's eyebrows revealed an arrogant and fierce expression as he said in a cold voice, This sword art is an ancient flying sword art. According to research, it should have been left by first Madame Gongsun of the Tang dynasty. But it is slightly different from the Kunlun flying sword. It is much sharper and trickier. Please comment on it, fellow cultivator Jiang. After saying that, he made a hand seal and the sword on his back flew out of the scabbard and laid horizontally in front of him. When this sword left the scabbard, a loud noise rang out, like the rumbling of thunder and the roaring of an azure dragon. A green sword chi that could sweep across heaven and earth shot up into the sky from his back. Situ Zhao held his sword in one hand and swung it horizontally in the air. This sword released a green light that was more than 100 feet long, and it pressed down on the mountains. Qing Sua sword! Li Jiuyo screamed like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. His eyes were filled with extreme shock. It was an ancient treasure that had been used by the founder of the Amei sword sect, the White Brow Immortal. Later, it was lost in a war of killing demons and disappeared without a trace. Unexpectedly, it fell into the hands of Situ Shao. This sword had an azure dragon coiled around the hilt like a rope. The body of the sword was green like a bolt of green lightning. Its shape was strange, and the light of the treasure was strong. Situ Shao activated it with all his strength. His feet stepped on the dipper steps, his left hand made hand seals, and his mouth chanted. In the middle of this, his face turned purple and hot sweat flowed down his face. His body trembled violently, and his hands trembled crazily. It seemed that driving this sword was like lifting a 10,000-ton mountain. It was very strenuous and heavy. Go! Finally, his right arm that was holding the sword shook slightly. The moment the sword shot out, heaven and earth changed color. The void trembled uneasily, as if some kind of restriction had been opened. Tens of thousands of auroras, like rivers returning to the sea, were poured into this sword. To be more precise, this Qing Suo sword was crazily swallowing the spiritual energy of this area. It was like a black hole, swallowing everything, even the auroras. The sky suddenly darkened, and the stars were clearly visible. Auroras. In fact, they were a kind of energy in themselves. They came from the Earth's magnetosphere and the Sun's high-energy charged particle flow, which excited or ionized the molecules or atoms in the upper atmosphere. It was a kind of magnetic storm, containing the energy of the Sun. In a few breaths, a conical cyclone that was 1,000 meters long suddenly appeared in the sky. It spun and madly poured into the Qing Suo sword. The cyclone became bigger and bigger. 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, 3,000 meters, 4,000 meters. Finally, the tail of the cyclone was like a tornado, probing into the depths of the sky. The tail could not be seen. Rumble. The moment the boundless spiritual energy and auroras poured in, the Qing Suo sword bloomed with azure light, as if it was alive, shaking uneasily. It was like a giant green thunder flickering incessantly. It was like a dormant dragon awakening. In an instant, the Qing Suo sword spewed out tens of thousands of azure light, which turned into a sharp azure light, traversing hundreds of meters and piercing towards Jiangtian. Wherever the azure light passed, the void between Jiangtian and Situ Shao was annihilated. Lightning swallowed and spat, and the magnetic storm was like thunder. Pieces of land exploded, and mountains collapsed. At this moment, countless people looked up and stared at the huge azure light in the sky. The Qing Suo sword, the sword-controlling technique of the Situ family. I'm afraid that Kong Teichu won't be able to withstand this attack even if he's at the peak of the Earth Immortal realm. Zhou Zishuan shook his head regretfully. The Qing Suo sword was originally a spiritual treasure, which contained the power of the Azure Dragon. Coupled with the sword-controlling technique, Jiang Tian's chances of winning were slim. It comes like thunder, withdraws like the wrath of the river and sea, condenses like the clear light of the river and sea. Kong Teichu is in danger. Liang Zichen and the other Diansong elders were dazzled, their hearts palpitating. The strength of this sword was too terrifying. It could destroy a small city. It was not an exaggeration to say that it had the power to destroy a city. Senior Situ's sword is truly unparalleled. No one can rival it. Li Jiuyo also exclaimed. His eyes were full of fear and fascination. Jiang Tian will definitely die. The Situ family is famous for their sword-controlling technique. With this famous sword of Mount Amei, their attack power has increased tenfold. How can he not die? Song Shuangyin screamed excitedly and cheered for Situ Shao, as if Jiang Tian would definitely die. The power of this sword was immeasurable. It was like a cluster of missiles bombarding continuously. Wherever it passed, the area within 10 miles was in a mess and all living things would be destroyed. But at least it could be judged that this sword was 10 times or even 100 times more powerful than Hao Taichung's blood god sword. Spiritual artifact. Jiang Tian was shocked. This Qing Suo sword had actually refined the soul of an azure dragon into it, forming a sword spirit. It was said that the founder of Mount Shu, White Brow spiritual master, had once captured a azure dragon in the Min River. The sword spirit of the Qing Suo sword must have been refined with the divine soul of this azure dragon. Jiang Tian's divine sense could sense the hidden divine soul of the azure dragon. It was as thick as a water tank and hundreds of meters long. It was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws in the air, swallowing the essence of the aurora and the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Secondly, Sidu Zhao's sword controlling technique was indeed powerful. It had actually defeated Jiang Tian's heaven-covering hand restriction. Even if it was only for a few breaths, he still succeeded in controlling the flying sword. In addition, his fighting style was also very smart. He actually came up with a strange move of swallowing the aurora energy. After swallowing the aurora energy to strengthen the azure dragon sword spirit, it then swallowed the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, forming a huge cyclone of thousands of meters long. Break it! In the face of this overbearing green light, Jiang Tian punched out. The millstone-like gunmetal divine fist pulled open a turbulence of air that was hundreds of meters long, forcibly shattering a small part of the green light. However, the rest still pierced towards Jiang Tian. Seeing this, Jiang Tian's expression turned serious. He raised his hand and grabbed at the air. With a boom, the green sword light exploded. On the other side, Sidu Zhao directly withdrew the Qing Suo sword and held it tightly in his hand. However, his arm was trembling, and he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Just now, Jiang Tian only casually punched and grabbed, but it made him feel like his divine soul was trembling. The Qing Suo sword was almost taken away. He used 3 types of sword-controlling secret techniques in a row to take back the Qing Suo sword by a hair's breadth. However, he was so tired that he spat out blood. Jiang Tian glanced at the sword wound on his shoulder. There was a bit of blood there, and his expression turned cold. Ever since he cultivated the gunmetal divine body, he was not even afraid of missiles. This was the first time he was injured. It was obvious how terrifying this sword was. Fellow Taoist Jiang, this sword, I still failed. Situ Zhao shook his head and smiled bitterly again. There was a bit of disappointment in his eyes, but he was very impressed with Jiang Tian. I didn't expect you to be so powerful. He had used all his strength in this sword attack. It had consumed a lot of his qi, blood, and divine soul. This sword attack could not kill Jiang Tian, and the sword controlling technique he used next would be weaker than this sword attack. There was almost no possibility of him winning. Fellow Taoist Situ, it's my turn now. I'll show you what a real flying sword is. Jiang Tian's expression turned cold. He patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd at his waist. In the sky, there seemed to be a black bolt of lightning. Little black flying sword whoosh. With a sharp whistle, it stabbed at Situ Zhao like a bolt of lightning. What a terrifying sword attack. The moment Jiang Tian's little black flying sword shot out, Situ Zhao was suddenly alarmed. His expression changed drastically. The little black flying sword's speed was not bad. There must be a sword whistle. However, Situ Zhao could not hear it at all. It was obvious that the sword's speed was definitely faster than the sound barrier. Sure enough, in less than a second, the little black flying sword had crossed a distance of several kilometers and appeared 50 meters in front of Situ Zhao. Dragon come! Situ Zhao's hair fluttered like an upside-down waterfall. He held the sword and roared. A dragon's roar shook dozens of miles. The green dragon sword spirit suddenly revealed its true form. What's that? At this moment, everyone looked up to the sky and exclaimed. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Oh my God! That's a dragon! Many powerful cultivators were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. A green dragon that was hundreds of meters long stretched across the sky. It shook its head and wagged its tail, roaring angrily as it circled. Its horns were prominent, and its mouth was as big as a blood basin. It had 2 huge red lantern-like eyes. The scales all over its body seemed to be made of green jade. They shone with a strange brilliance and were full of shocking power. Dragon! The dragon of Huaxia only existed in legends. It was the totem of the ancestors of Huaxia. It was like a god. However, with the development of science, who still believed in the existence of dragons. At this moment, the divine soul of a green dragon appeared in front of everyone. Everyone was suffocated and their hearts almost jumped out of their throats. Chapter 757. This is the green dragon sword spirit of the green Suo sword. I didn't expect it to really exist. At this moment, Zhou Zixuan, Li Jiuyo, and the other Chinese overlords were extremely excited, as if they had seen a beautiful woman. This is too scary. Master Kong is really in danger. Even though they were a few miles apart, the Wolf King could feel the terrifying power of the green dragon. That vast and powerful aura almost made him collapse to the ground. Yes, he felt an extreme pressure, as if thousands of mountains were pressing down on him, and he was about to be smashed into pieces. Dragon! The dragon of Huaxia. This is incredible. The dragon of Huaxia, the legendary divine beast. Who can resist it? The other members of the moon-worshipping wolf clan and many Russian overlords knelt down and prostrated themselves in worship. This green dragon sword spirit had been refined and raised by generations of overlords, and it contained vast dharma power. Just its terrifying size alone was enough to scare people out of their wits. What did it mean to be 300 or 400 meters long? It could wrap around a football field. It surpassed any known creature in the world. Such a thing spanned across the sky like a mountain, and it brought a great visual impact to people. It could even trigger phobia. The green dragon sword spirit danced in the air majestically. Its eyes were wide open, and the scales all over its body were exploding, as if it was a fierce wolf. The next moment, it opened its bloody mouth and spat out strong flames at Xiao Hei's flying sword. The flames were dozens of meters long. Suddenly, the snow mountains under Xiao Hei's flying sword collapsed. The ice that had been silent for many years melted in an instant, and water vapor rose and flowed down like a waterfall. Xiao Hei's flying sword paused. But the next moment, its speed skyrocketed, and a sharp sword aura more than 500 meters long pierced through the sky. This 100-meter-long sword ray was like a black line, easily piercing through the high-temperature flames spewed out by the sword spirit. Moreover, it cut through the sword spirit's mountain-like head like a knife cutting through water. The green dragon sword spirit's body, which had been nourished by many human immortals and earth immortals for hundreds of years, was as thick as a water tank, and its scales, which were as white as jade and could withstand the barrage of missiles, was cut by the sharp black sword aura like a hot knife cutting through butter. Roar! The azure dragon sword spirit let out a miserable shriek. Just as its huge head smashed down a few meters, a large amount of uncontrollable spiritual energy exploded. Bang, bang, bang! It was as if missiles had been shot down and exploded one after another. Huge green flowers appeared in the sky, forming a stretch of 1 kilometer long. Rumble! Below it, 7 or 8 icebergs that were over 100 meters tall collapsed one after another, as if there was a major earthquake. This time, the explosion was very close to Sidushao. Within a radius of 1 to 2 kilometers, a chaotic mass of sword spirit fragments, ice, snow, gravel, and raging fire instantly enveloped Sidushao. No one could see his condition clearly. Senior Situ, is he dead? Everyone looked up, their hearts palpitating and their hearts pained. Whether it was Jiang Tian or Sidushao, they both made people feel a kind of spirit, a kind of strength. Pursuing the limits of human strength, going against the heavens, never admitting defeat, and never stopping. As magnificent as gods. They were like Prometheus who stole the heavenly fire. They moved forward unhurriedly, the heavenly fire dancing in their eyes, the flame of cultivation civilization, and the pursuit of the limits of human strength. That was the passion of martyrs. When the smoke and dust cleared, Situ Shao appeared. He stood on a half-destroyed mountain peak, and the Qing Suo sword in his hand was more than half broken. His left arm was shattered, the eerie white bones and strands of muscle fiber blowing weakly in the wind. There was a bloody hole in his chest, and the blood on his chest was mottled, but it seemed to have been condensed by some secret technique and no more blood flowed down. I've lost. Situ Shao smiled bitterly, looked at Jiang Tian in the sky, and said, I accept my defeat wholeheartedly. Everyone exclaimed. How could you lose to Jiang Tian? How is that possible? Song Shuangyan waved her hands and shouted unwillingly. Senior Situ, you are already an Earth immortal, and you have thousands of secret techniques to condense a body, right? Li Jiuyo couldn't help but ask. His meaning was very clear. He could still fight after condensing a body. Why did he admit defeat so quickly? This was also the confusion of many people, including Zhou Zixuan. In fact, not to mention the peak battle between human immortals and Earth immortals, even the battle between immortal state immortals, as long as one didn't die, there was still a possibility of a comeback. Everyone could condense a body. As long as their blood essence and Dharma power were not exhausted, it was not the end at all. Grandmaster Zhang's power of restrictions is too strong. It has simply reached the point where the laws can move at will and are everywhere. Situ Shao asked bitterly. If I'm not wrong, there is also a restrictive spell on this black flying sword that can't be healed, right? You know your stuff. Jiang Tian nodded approvingly. Hearing this, everyone turned pale with fright and felt a chill in their hearts. Jiang Tian's restrictive spells were too terrifying. Even if you couldn't heal your wounds, how was that different from ordinary people? This restrictive spell is still in my body. To put it bluntly, all the methods I have to repair it are useless now. Situ Shao said. Master Kang's sword just now went through my chest and was only an inch away from my heart. With Master Kang's amazing perception, you must have shown mercy on purpose, right? Yes, you are talented. I don't have any deep hatred for you. I've killed too many people and I'm tired of it. Jiang Tian said lightly. Master Kang, with a sharp sword in hand, conquering the world, stepping on the sun and the moon to stabilize the universe, just like an ancient deity. Situ Shao was in awe. He dropped his sword on the ground and kowtowed to Jiang Tian, lowering his noble head. I, Situ Shao, am very grateful and extremely respectful. I am willing to be Master Kang's lackey. The entire iceberg archipelago was silent. Everyone held their breaths as they watched this shocking scene. At this time, the Earth-level deity bowed and kowtowed. Only Jiang Tian stood in the air with his hands behind his back like a deity. He made the Earth-level deity bow to him. Song Shuangyan's body shook and her face turned pale. Then she couldn't help but tremble. Everyone was incomparably shocked. A storm was set off in their hearts as they stared blankly at this scene. A moment ago, under the pressure of Li Jiuyo, Zhou Zixuan, Hao Taichong, Wolf Ancestor and Situ Shao, Jiang Tian seemed to be in a hopeless situation. Even Alexander, the Wolf King, didn't have much confidence in Jiang Tian. These human deity saints and even an Earth-level deity were all famous figures 100 years ago. They had once ruled a country and a sect and had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas and destroy cities. All of them seemed to be more powerful than Jiang Tian. It seemed that Jiang Tian didn't have a chance of winning. But in the blink of an eye, Jiang Tian had killed Wolf Ancestor, crushed Hao Taichong, slapped Zhou Zixuan and Li Jiuyo, and made Situ Shao kneel and kowtow to him sincerely. In such a dangerous situation, with so many terrible overlords, Jiang Tian had turned the tables. Who would believe that he defeated an Earth-level deity for 100 years? Until now, Li Jiuyo, Zhou Zixuan and the other overlords in Huaxia still couldn't believe it. An itinerant cultivator who rose to prominence in the mortal world and was just an ordinary person a few years ago had now defeated the semi-hidden sects in Huaxia. The sect masters of the ancient Wudang sect, Dianzong, a Mei sword sect, Tianshan sect and the ancestral master of the Hong sect were no match for Jiang Tian. Who would believe it if they told others? Alas, who else in the world can defeat Kang Taichu now? Zhou Zixuan shook his head and sighed. He felt like a hero past his prime. Compared to Jiang Tian, he felt that his cultivation was in vain. He had worked so hard for 100 years to become a human deity, but Chen Fan had defeated an Earth-level deity after only 4 years of cultivation. In the west, only the Dark Parliament and the Holy See, and in Huaxia, only Kunlun and Hongmeng can fight with him. Li Jiuyo suddenly thought of something and exclaimed. He now suspected that even if Yi Tianren was born, he might not be able to defeat Jiang Tian in a one-on-one battle. Only the Kunlun and Hongmeng overlords could defeat him. Sidu Shao, I will help you repair your broken arm. Jiang Tian heaved a sigh. Sidu Shao was a good person and had a good vision and mindset. He challenged Jiang Tian not because of personal grudges, but because he wanted to reach the peak of martial arts. Besides, this person was open and honest. From the beginning to the end, he had only relied on his own combat power and Dharma power. He didn't use many defensive Dharma treasures. This was a real competition, not an unscrupulous way to win. What? My broken arm can be repaired? Situ Shao couldn't believe it, and he was overjoyed. That's easy. Jiang Tian smiled and made a hand seal with his right hand. Suddenly, the vast and pure essence chi of heaven and earth gathered from all directions and formed a mysterious and obscure talisman in the air. This talisman was engraved with countless mysterious runes and exuded a vigorous aura of life. It was like a small world full of vitality, running on its own and growing endlessly. He was now at the 8th level of chi refinement. This kind of Dharma Tao to repair the body was at his fingertips. It could revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones. Then, Jiang Tian flicked his finger and the talisman flew out and wrapped around Situ Zhao's broken arm. Everyone was shocked to see that the meridians, blood vessels, and muscles on Situ Zhao's broken arm were recovering and growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths, the skin was covered and the arm was as good as new, as if it had never been injured. Then, Jiang Tian used the same talisman to repair the Wolf King's arm. Master Kong, from now on, you are my master. Immediately, the Wolf King was moved to tears. He kowtowed to Jiang Tian and prostrated himself on the ground as if he was seeing a real god. After doing all this, Jiang Tian floated to the ground and slowly walked in front of Song Shuangyan. He smiled and said, Song Shuangyan, how do you feel now? Jiangkan, please spare me. I am willing to be your slave and serve you for the rest of my life. I will work hard without complaint and will not refuse. Song Shuangyan was so scared that her whole body trembled. She threw herself at Jiang Tian's feet and hugged his legs as she begged for mercy. At this time, she was so regretful that her intestines turned green. That deep regret could not be washed away by the 3 rivers and 5 seas. She had the urge to cry and her beautiful eyes glistened with tears. Chapter 758. Song Shuangyan had never thought that Jiang Tian, whom she had abandoned like a pair of worn-out shoes, would be so powerful. He could defeat an earth-level deity. Give me a chance, please forgive me. Jiangtan, I know I was wrong. Song Shuangyan was full of regret and fear. She looked at Jiang Tian with tears running down her cheeks. Her regret couldn't be described with words. Originally, she had a marriage agreement with Jiang Tian. If she had seen Jiang Tian's extraordinary strength and married Jiang Tian, she would have become the mother of a country like Zhao Xueqing, a supreme beauty who could make Hera bow her head and be on an equal footing with the first ladies of many big countries. If she could have another chance, she would never have made an enemy of Jiang Tian. Instead, she would have loved Jiang Tian as a treasure and worshipped him as a god. She would have married him and become a gentle, considerate, and dutiful wife. She would have even been willing to be his slave. If she could turn back time, she would not have coveted the incomplete map of the ruins of immortality of the Jiang Tian family. Instead, she would have given the map collected by the Song family to Jiang Tian and fought with him to achieve glory together. The incomplete map of the ruins of immortality was not a treasure. Jiang Tian was the most precious treasure in the world, the biggest support. A trace of coldness flashed across Jiang Tian's face. He said mockingly, Song Shuangyan, I've been merciful enough. I've given you so many chances to correct your mistakes. Don't you know that? Jiang Tian. Once these words were spoken, Song Shuangyan froze. She was dumbfounded and speechless. The regret in her heart grew even denser, and it surged and surged like the tide, causing her tears to flow violently as she wailed loudly. Jiang Tian's words were completely correct. Originally, when Jiang Tian came to Yanjing to ask for the incomplete map of the ruins of immortality, he had asked Lu Liwei and the others to deliver the message. She could return the favor to Jiang Tian and turn hostility into friendship. She could even borrow Jiang Tian's power. After all, Jiang Tian was not a narrow-minded person. The Zhang family had once let Jiang Tian down, but they repented in time and were brought to the altar by Jiang Tian. Originally, Zhang Qianlei had lost to Jiang Tian, and the Song clan had returned the map fragment. Jiang Tian had not been ruthless and had let her go. Song Shuangyan had entered Mount Shu's Mei sect, and Jiang Tian had gone overseas to expand his territory. The well water did not interfere with the river water. In time, the Song family could still slowly revive. However, Song Shuangyan instigated Mei to compete with Jiang Tian for the map of the ruins of immortality and followed Hao Taichong to kill Jiang Tian. From the beginning to the end today, she had been shouting about beating and killing. She kept saying that she was a righteous sect and that Jiang Tian was an ant. She had done everything she could to humiliate him. Song Shuangyan sadly realized. At this time, the Mei sect had collapsed. Wanting to revive the Song clan was no different from a fool's dream. Moreover, she had offended Jiang Tian too thoroughly. Jiang Tian would not let her go. Yes, she had provoked and offended him again and again. No one would forgive her. Not to mention, Jiang Tian had always been a person who killed people and exterminated clans at the slightest provocation. It could be said that everything that had happened now was caused by her being too arrogant and condescending. She had repeatedly underestimated Jiang Tian's strength. So much so that she could not even save her own life. That day on Mount Yen, on Cloud Watching Peak, I had said that I would leave my head with you. I would come and take it at any time. I would give you one chance, but there would not be a second time. Did you think I was joking? Jiang Tian smiled coldly, and his eyes suddenly became cold. You. Song Shuangyan was so scared that her face was paler than a corpse that had been dead for 3 days. Her delicate body trembled, her legs turned into noodles, and she even urinated. Jiang Tian wanted to kill her. This was not an exaggeration. She did not have any way to restrain Jiang Tian. The Song clan of Yanjing had fallen from the altar. Now, even Jiang Tian's grandfather, the Zhang clan, was far inferior. And the Jiang clan had already controlled the entire country of Sidoni. They were on par with the great powers of the world. In terms of background, she was helpless. Song Shuangyan only had Mount Shu's Mei sect as her trump card. Now, even the sect leader was killed by Jiang Tian with a flick of his finger. And Jiang Tian was now the dignified national hunter, the earth immortal Jiang that even Situ Shao respected. In terms of cultivation and strength, who could stop him? She was the meat on the chopping block, and Jiang Tian could do whatever he wanted to her. Go to hell! Song Shuangyan stood up. Just as she took a step back, Jiang Tian had already flicked his finger and pointed at her. Bang! Song Shuangyan's body exploded, turning into a sparkling red rain of blood that scattered on the ground. Immediately after, Jiang Tian shot out another fireball talisman, directly burning the rain of blood to the point that not even a trace of ash remained. Even her soul was burned to the point of being annihilated amidst her shrill screams. The original #1 socialite of Yanjing, the current Mei sect leader's disciple, Song Shuangyan, died just like that. Although Song Shuangyan's cultivation was very low, and in Jiang Tian's eyes, she was just an ant that he could destroy with a raise of his hand. But at this moment, Jiang Tian killed her, which made him secretly happy. The reason was very simple. It was like a mosquito that bit you a few times. Although it would not cause you any harm, it was still very annoying. Smashing it into smithereens with a single slap was simply refreshing and satisfying to his heart's content. The feeling was like eating a spicy hot pot in the dead of winter or eating iced watermelon in the hot summer. Awesome! Jiang Tian sighed. At this moment, Jiang Tian suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction of the sword mound. A trace of seriousness appeared on his face. At this time, Situ Zhao's face was full of excitement. Master Kong, is the sword mound about to open? At this time, the entire sword mound trembled uneasily. The ice and snow on the 9 swords, which were dozens of meters tall, peeled off one after another, revealing a sharp edge. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth gushed out, as if some kind of restriction had been opened. Through the valley entrance, one could see 10,000 rays of light blooming in the sword mound. Thousands of auspicious colors lingered, dazzling and magnificent. Moreover, strange flowers and plants emerged from the ice and snow, gently swaying, full of vitality. Between heaven and earth, there was an abundance of vitality and spiritual energy. Even from far away, it made people feel ecstatic. At the entrance, there seemed to be a ripple of water that appeared. It made everything inside look hazy, like a fairyland, appearing even more mysterious and attractive. Master Kong, please allow us to enter the sword mound together. We will all obey Master Kong in the future. If you have any orders, we will not hesitate. Zhou Zixuan, Li Jiuyo and the others crossed hundreds of meters in one step and came through the ice and snow, earnestly begging. Jiang Tian scanned with his divine sense and his face became unprecedentedly solemn. He shouted loudly, "All of you, retreat quickly." Master Kong. Everyone was very disappointed and excited. Master Kong had made it clear that he wanted to monopolize the sword mound. This was a bit too selfish. At this time, the oligarchs such as Berezov and Anfia, as well as many Russian overlords, had also arrived in snowmobiles and helicopters. They stood at the door and bowed to Jiang Tian begging, "Master Kong, can we go in? There is a time array hidden in this sword mound. It will imprison you forever and you can't escape." Jiang Tian's face was solemn. He glanced at everyone and said loudly, "If you go in, all of your lifespan will be taken away within 10 days to half a month. I'll even make you beg for death." He didn't care about the life and death of these Russians. But Zhou Zixuan, Li Jiuyo and the others were after all from Huaxia, and they were the pillars of the semi-hidden sections. These semi-hidden sects overlords were very likely to play a big role in the country's crisis. Jiang Tian didn't want them to die for nothing. "Master Kong, even if there is a time array, we are willing to do it," Zhou Zixuan said modestly without batting an eyelid. In fact, he clearly didn't believe Jiang Tian's words. He thought that Jiang Tian was scaring them and wanted to monopolize the resources. Seeing this, Jiang Tian sighed softly and shook his head. Good words couldn't persuade those who deserved to die. If they wanted to die, then let them die. "Master Kong, this old man will go in first and wait for you inside." Seeing that Jiang Tian didn't say anything, Zhou Zixuan immediately led the 5 elders of Diancong into the sword tomb. "Master Kong, I will go in and be your vanguard. If there are good treasures, you can choose first." Li Jiuyo smiled flatteringly, bowed to Jiang Tian, and followed in. "Father, should we go in?" Anfia looked at Berezov and asked softly. "Of course." A trace of eagerness appeared on Berezov's face. He was a Russian oligarch and was as rich as a country, but he was still suppressed by an overlord like the Wolf King. He hoped to get some treasures so that a few overlords like the Wolf King could come out of his family and dominate Siberia. But Mr. Jiang just said. Anfia was a little hesitant. He is just bluffing to scare us. He wants to monopolize all the treasures," Berezov said disdainfully in a low voice. "But if he wants to monopolize all the treasures, he can stop us," Anfia hesitated and said in a low voice. Berezov frowned, and then muttered to himself, "What? I think he's still afraid of us deep in his bones. After all, we are close to the Russian emperor. From his point of view, it is better to scare us away than to attack us." His thoughts became clearer and clearer, and he became more and more confident. This is the Arctic Circle, where there is no life. A nuclear explosion is possible. If he kills us, the Russian emperor will definitely attack him. He straightened his body and a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. Even if he is the legendary Earth-level deity Holy King, he will still be afraid of Russian nuclear weapons. Yes, there are countless magical treasures in the sword tomb. Once we enter, we will benefit a lot. Let's go in. A Russian overlord said in a low voice as he looked at the entrance with burning eyes. At this time, everyone was ready to move. They rubbed their palms and stole glances at Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian had already heard their conversation, but he was too lazy to stop them. He had already made it very clear just now. Since they wanted to court death, then he would leave them to their own devices. That's right, as long as we get 1 or 2 inheritances, we can become a peerless overlord and surpass the Wolf King. Seeing that Jiang Tian was ignoring them, another overlord rushed to the entrance impatiently. At this moment, many of the Russian powerhouses could no longer sit still and rushed toward the entrance in a rush. Master Kong, are we still going in? The Wolf King said in a low muffled voice, his face solemn. He felt that Jiang Tian was definitely not bluffing. If Jiang Tian wanted to monopolize the Sword Tomb, he could have just killed them. Why would he need to scare them? As for the Russian emperor, why would he offend the dignified Earth-level deity Jiang for the cheap lives of a few secular oligarchs? He dared to attack Jiang Tian. The tragic end of French President Sanchi was a lesson for him. Chapter 759. Wolf King, this place is very dangerous, but I still have a way to deal with it. Jiang Tian said calmly. I can protect you and Situ Shao, but your followers don't have to go in. Also, ask them to go to Sidoni and pass a message to the Taiqing sect. If the enemy attacks, don't worry about me. Just protect Sidoni. My safety is not a problem. Situ Shao was overjoyed. The Wolf King said something to the moon-worshipping wolf tribe and waved his hand, asking them to leave quickly. Then, Jiang Tian, accompanied by Situ Shao and the Wolf King, strode into the sword vault. He's gone in. After Jiang Tian and the other 2 walked into the sword mound, a figure slowly materialized 20 kilometers away from the sword mound. If Jiang Tian were here, he would definitely recognize that this person was Duke Dracula, who had been intimidated by him in France. Now, he was a general under the command of Nie Mingyuan, the Warden of Hell. You'll die if you go in. Another person appeared like a ghost and grinned sinisterly. The sword vault has been modified by our master. Now, it's an array within an array. It's very fierce. The Divine Power Break Array that can shrink the body and stop all divine powers. The one-day prison array that once trapped a cardinal to death. These formations are embedded with each other, plus the formation of the sword catacomb itself. How can he not die? This person was very handsome and elegant, like an elegant medieval gentleman. However, his face was pale and his eyes were abnormally cold. If the overlords in the underground world saw this, they would be so shocked that their legs would turn to jelly. This person was Cage, one of the 8 blood ancestors of the first generation of vampires. Who would have thought that Cage, the blood ancestor who had been living in seclusion for hundreds of years, would come out and become Nie Mingyuan's accomplice? He was a peerless overlord who was comparable to an earth-level deity and a sage king. Yes, Kong Taichu will definitely die. That cardinal is a sacred master and is as beautiful as a divine fairy. Dracula cackled. One day in the prison formation, the flow of time is accelerated. One day is equivalent to 10 years. Even if Kong Taichu is a heaven immortal, he will die in just 500 days. Kong Taichu is indeed a once-in-a-century cultivation genius. Blood Ancestor Cage sighed with some regret. He's even more talented than Yi Tianren 100 years ago. Unfortunately, he offended our master, the hell-suppressing Demon King. Yes, our master is really too strong. Even the 8 most powerful blood ancestors are no match for him. Dracula's voice trembled as a trace of deep fear appeared on his face. The hell-suppressing demon monarch has appeared, and the eternal night is upon us. The blood ancestor's robe flapped in the wind as he spread his arms and shouted excitedly, "Let the world tremble! Let the entire human world submit! This will become our world." After passing through the thin layer of restrictions at the entrance of the Sword Tomb Valley, everyone's eyes instantly lit up. Inside the sword mound, The sun was shining brightly and it was full of vitality. It was as if they had entered another world. And the area seemed to be 100 times larger than before, at least 100 miles in radius. This was too strange. One had to know that from the outside, this place was less than 10 kilometers in radius. Why did it become so big after entering? Moreover, in the forest, tall trees covered the sky and the sun. They were at least 100 meters tall, and their thick trunks required 5 or 6 people to encircle. People were as small as ants under the trees. Such trees were too shocking and were extremely rare outside. On the hillside, the grass was luxuriant, and there was a clear spring flowing over the stones. It was like a paradise. Is this the sword tomb? Situ Zhao's expression changed drastically as he frowned. I came here once before, but it wasn't like this. It wasn't this big. Yes and no, Jiang Tian smiled mysteriously. This was still the sword tomb, but it had been modified by the array formation. After entering, everyone's size had been reduced. Therefore, visually and intuitively, one would feel that the sword tomb had become much larger. Jiang Tian was somewhat shocked. It wasn't because this array formation was bizarre and profound. He didn't know how many of these crude, small-scale space-time arrays he had set up in his previous life, and how many had he broken. It was because he didn't expect such space-time arrays to exist on Earth during the Age of Doom. This must have been left behind by the ancient cultivators, and then moved here by Nie Mingyuan and the others, and merged with the sword tomb. Oh my God! What kind of divine grass is this? Why is it so beautiful and crystal clear? Suddenly, Anfia exclaimed, her eyes filled with joy. She found a plant on the hillside. It was half the height of a person, and its branches and leaves were like jasper, and the flowers seemed to be carved out of red agate. It was extraordinary at first glance, and probably priceless. Master Kong, do you want it? Anfia looked at Jiang Tian and asked, if you want it, I'll give it to you. After all, she was too afraid of Jiang Tian's powerful strength. If Jiang Tian wanted to snatch it, no one could stop him. No need. Jiang Tian shook his head gently. These people were going to die anyway, so there was no need for him to accept this favor. Besides, this grand herb wasn't that valuable to him. Since Master Kong doesn't want it, then I won't hold back. Li Jiuyo chuckled when he saw the treasure. Then he reached out to grab the divine herb. This is mine. Anfia was anxious and stepped forward to stop him. She was willing to give it to Jiang Tian, but she might not be willing to give it to Li Jiuyo. You ant, how dare you snatch it from me? Do you want to die? Li Jiuyo slapped her to the ground, then pulled the divine grass up and stuffed it into his backpack. Give it back to me. Anfia was furious and pointed a gun at Li Jiuyo. Are you kidding me? Li Jiuyo said with a mocking face. I'm a peak-stage human deity. Even missiles can't kill me, and you want to kill me with a gun? Are you dreaming? He approached Anfia fiercely and sneered. How dare you threaten me? You really don't know what's good for you. I'll rape and kill you first. Master Kong, this woman is two-faced. She's not a good person. I don't think you'll stop her, right? Jiang Tian didn't care about the dispute between these ants. He didn't even look at them. After all, they were going to die soon. Everyone was angry but didn't dare to say anything. After all, Li Jiuyo was a human deity and was as powerful as the wolf ancestor. Who would dare to stop him? Don't come over. Don't come over. Anfia's face turned pale and she was trembling. She fired a shot in a hurry. A shocking scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. With a bang, Li Jiuyo's head exploded and his headless body fell to the ground. No one dared to believe their eyes. They were all dumbstruck. I actually killed him? Even Anfia was stunned. Li Jiuyo was a human deity from Huaxia. Missiles couldn't kill him. But how could he be killed with just one shot? Master Kong, this is bad. At this moment, Situ Zhao's pupils suddenly shrank. He moved closer to Jiang Tian and said in a trembling voice, I found that I can't use my true chi at all. The same goes for all kinds of arcane arts and dharma spells. Well, it's like this. In this area, the spirit chi of heaven and earth is confined. Cultivators are no different from ordinary people, but after you go out, you can still recover. The problem is that you have to be able to go out alive. Jiang Tian smiled and said, at this moment, all the Russian priests and Grand Magi also noticed the abnormality. They couldn't use their cultivation. Berezov rolled his eyes a few times and suddenly understood something. Bang! He took out a pistol and fired at several priests and Grand Magi, turning them into sieves. These people were covered in blood and fell to the ground one after another, dead. "Ah, that's great." Berezov laughed hysterically. "I didn't expect everyone to become ordinary people here. Where are your abilities? Why don't you use them?" "Humph, you usually rely on your cultivation to do whatever you want in Russia. Now, it's my turn to call the shots." Jiang Tian and the other cultivators actually despised cold weapons. No one brought guns. But Berezov and the other oligarchs and their bodyguards never left their guns. Now that the cultivator's cultivation had been sealed, whoever had the spear would be the king, and whoever had the final say. Berezov grabbed an AK-47 from his subordinate and pointed it at the many cultivators majestically. He roared loudly, "Kneel down. Now, all of you are my servants and followers, serving me with all your lives. Whoever dares to disobey will be killed immediately." Although the Russian powerhouses were indignant, they had no choice but to lower their heads under the eaves, so they obediently knelt down. "Berezov, how dare you point a gun at me?" A powerhouse who had awakened his physical body was very unwilling. He glared at Berezov and shouted angrily, "Not only can I point a gun at you, but I can also kill you." Berezov shot the powerhouse directly in the head. Brain matter splattered and blood flowed. The powerhouse died on the spot. This time, the remaining powerhouses, including Zhou Zishuan and the others, were so scared that they knelt down in front of Berezov. Some were even worse. They were so loyal that they completely lost their original pride. "Awesome. This is awesome." Berezov was complacent. He raised the AK-47 and laughed wildly. He felt that he had reached the peak of his life. These Russian powerhouses all had unfathomable abilities and powerful bloodlines. No one dared to provoke them in the whole of Siberia. Even the oligarchs and the Russian emperor were afraid of them. Now they were all kneeling at his feet. Wasn't it great? Berezov noticed that Jiang Tian, Wolf King, and the other two were indifferent. He frowned. Then he said arrogantly, "Mr. Jiang, you saved my life. Mr. Jiang, you once saved my daughter's life. I won't ask you to kneel. Bow to me." This was the state hunter, Jiang Di-Xian. If he bowed to him, he would be able to show off in the upper-class society. Of course, this grudge was formed. After leaving, Jiang Tian might very well take revenge. Therefore, he had to find a chance to kill Jiang Tian. However, it was inconvenient for him to do it in front of his daughter. He pointed at Wolf King and said fiercely, "But Wolf King, you must kneel to me. You have humiliated me too much before." Wolf King was angry, but he didn't dare to refute. His bloodline power was also sealed at the moment. He was completely an ordinary person and couldn't block a bullet at all. "You really don't know what's good for you. How dare you ask me to bow to a dying man? Are you worthy?" Jiang Tian's face was filled with disdain. "Now, kowtow to me and admit your mistake. When you are about to die, maybe I will help you." As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Chapter 760. What did he say? Everyone thought that Jiang Tian had lost his mind. Yes, Jiang Tian was powerful enough to defeat an earth-level deity. Every move he made had the power to destroy heaven and earth. But now that everyone's cultivation has been sealed, if you fight to the death with them, wouldn't you be courting death? Zhou Zishuan rolled his eyes a few times and slyly advised, "Grandmaster Jiang, people have no choice but to lower their heads under someone else's roof. Hurry up and kneel. Don't offend the honorable Mr. Berezov. Didn't you see what happened to Li Jiuyo?" He seemed to be trying to persuade Berezov, but in fact he was trying to show his loyalty to him. Who does he think he is? Does he think he's so great just because he has a gun? Jiang Tian sneered. "Who in this world dares to ask me, Kong Tichu, to kneel down?" You must be tired of living. This is not like the outside world. Your cultivation is useless. That's right. He's digging his own grave. He's too arrogant. This is the effect of the array of the sword catacomb. Even a sky immortal would not be able to use his cultivation here. Everyone thought that Jiang Tian was too arrogant. Didn't he know that the strong were easily broken? Zhou Zixuan was a human-level deity, but he also knelt down obediently. So what if you kneel down now? A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. As long as you can get out of the sword catacomb safely, you can do whatever you want. Mr. Jiang, how can you talk to my father like that? Seeing that all the powerhouses had surrendered except for Jiang Tian, Anfia was a little annoyed. She sneered. Are you an idiot? Don't you know that cultivators are useless here? You are at the mercy of others. Berezov was also very annoyed. Maybe he was still feeling humiliated because he had kowtowed and bowed his head too many times in this big show. At this moment, he wanted to vent all his depression and resentment, and he wanted to vent it by trampling on these experts that he'd once prostrated himself in worship. Jiang Tian, on the other hand, had undoubtedly interrupted his catharsis. Therefore, he pointed his gun at Jiang Tian and snorted arrogantly. Jiang, you are about to exhaust my patience. If you don't kneel down, I'll kill you with one shot. Human nature is really interesting. Jiang Tian said with a faint smile. Just now, you were kowtowing to me and worshipping me like a god. Now, when you think that you might be stronger than me and can threaten me, you want me to kneel to you immediately. Master Kong, isn't this the rule of your world of the strong? Anfia's pretty face turned cold as she sneered. The strong are respected and the weak are ants. You bully the weak and kill without batting an eyelid. You disregard the rules of the world. The experience on the island had touched her so much that her worldview had collapsed several times. Along the way, she was extremely nervous. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that her mind was severely distorted and she was about to lose her rationality. She raised her jade-white chin like a high and mighty princess and said proudly, Mr. Jiang, what kind of noble person are you? You said that this place is very dangerous, but everyone can see that this place is peaceful, like a paradise on earth. Where is the danger? As soon as she said this, everyone looked at Jiang Tian with disdain and started discussing. Yes, this place is very good. There are so many treasures. Where is the danger? I thought that there would be monsters and dragons. Who would have thought that there wouldn't even be an ant? Zhou Zixuan added, That's right, Master Kong. I don't want to criticize you, but you are really a little unethical. If you want to monopolize it, just say so. Who would dare to snatch it from you? But what about you? You want to monopolize the resources and even want to be the good guy. Now everyone can see that you are lying. My father is stronger than you now. So what if he wants you to kneel? And now he just wants you to bow. He is already very merciful. With everyone's support, Anfia became more confident and arrogant. She crossed her arms and mocked with disdain. Master Kong, there is an old saying in Huaxia. A person who can see reality is a hero. Berezov played with the AK-47 in his hand and smiled proudly. You should understand now. You should be aware of the situation now. If you don't kneel down, I will really shoot. Oh, you think that because you have guns, you are strong and I am an ant? Jiang Tian sneered. Is that not the case? Berezov said proudly. Okay, strong. Let's see how strong you are. Jiang Tian suddenly slapped out with his palm. Bam, bam. Berezov's body directly exploded. Countless sparkling and translucent pieces of flesh rained down from the sky. The whole place was silent. Everyone was dumbfounded. The muscles in their eyes twitched crazily as if they had seen a ghost. Jiang Tian was still a dozen meters away from Berezov. Berezov exploded with just a slap. This was clearly using magic or martial arts to kill someone. Even Situ Xiao was shocked and couldn't believe it. Could it be that the restriction here was useless against Master Kong? When everyone realized this, they were scared out of their wits. Jiang Tian's strength was originally higher than everyone's. Now that everyone's cultivation was suppressed and they were reduced to ordinary people, But Jiang Tian's cultivation was not reduced at all. Wouldn't that mean that they were at the mercy of Jiang Tian? In fact, these restrictions were completely useless to Jiang Tian. He had at least a dozen methods to break them. He could even go out immediately if he wanted to. However, he didn't go out because he had his own plan. He wanted to take advantage of the situation and use this fierce array to sublimate to the extreme, improve his cultivation, and directly build his foundation. Seeing her father turn into a rain of blood, Anfia was dumbfounded. Her face was as pale as paper, and she didn't come back to her senses for a long time. Then, she suddenly stomped her feet, pointed at Jiang Tian, and shouted angrily, Why did you kill my father? He wanted to kill me. Why can't I kill him? The weak should have the self-awareness of the weak. You should be good at using the weak's rules and morals to protect yourself. You even use the rules that are beneficial to the strong to provoke the strong. You are too stupid. Jiang Tian's words fell. Anfia was dumbfounded. Her face flushed red. She was ashamed and angry, but she didn't know what to say. Yes, Berezov had only himself to blame for his death. Berezov was a two-faced and fence-sitter. However, Jiang Tian was not a person who would kill the innocent. From the beginning to the end, he didn't take him seriously and didn't want to kill him. However, he thought that he was smart and thought that the mysterious sword tomb had also sealed Jiang Tian's cultivation. Therefore, he wanted to trample on Jiang Tian and threaten him with his life. Who was Jiang Tian? Hunter Jiang Dixian, the peerless master who once dominated France and forced the European Union to bow their heads. He killed tens of thousands of people at the slightest provocation. Killing him was just like crushing an ant. Princess Anfia, my condolences. Master Kong is too strong. You can't offend him. Berezov's bodyguards next to her were so scared that their faces turned pale. They hurriedly pulled her away and tried to persuade her. No matter how arrogant she would definitely be slapped to death by Master Kong. Master Kang's cultivation wasn't sealed. Bastard! Killing people without saying anything. Why doesn't he just die? Anfia could only walk to the side angrily, silently crying and cursing Jiang Tian in her heart. She couldn't even collect her father's body. The explosion range was at least 100 meters. The flesh particles and body fragments were like grains of rice. How could she collect them? At this time, Jiang Tian glanced at everyone and said disdainfully, Now, who's the powerhouse and who's the ant? Do you realize that? Why don't I kill a few of you to help you recognize your own strength? Jiang Tian flicked his finger. With a bang, the body of a Caucasian Grand Warlock exploded into a rain of sparkling flesh. Master Kong, please forgive us for offending you just now. Everyone was so scared that their faces turned pale and their bodies trembled as if they were sifting chaff. Seeing Jiang Tian's cold eyes, these people wanted to slap themselves. They were so regretful that their intestines turned green. They really didn't recognize Mount Tai. They had underestimated Master Kang's strength. How stupid! Grandmaster Jiang was an earth immortal of the present age. He was like a true god that had descended. How could he be judged with common sense? Although the Immortal of Nine Swords was rumored to be powerful, his cultivation might be on par with Master Kang's. Grandmaster Jiang being able to break the restrictions he had set up was only natural. Why hadn't he thought of it? Even if he had this idea, he should have just thought about it secretly. What was there to talk about? If he angered Master Kong, wouldn't it be a dead end for him? Master Kong, please forgive me. My advice just now was completely out of kindness. It was not disrespectful to you. Please be merciful. Don't kill me. Zhou Zixuan moved his knees to Jiang Tian and hugged Jiang Tian's legs. He begged with tears and snot flowing down his face. Get lost. Jiang Tian felt as if a toad was lying on his leg. He was so disgusted that he kicked him. Zhou Zixuan was immediately sent flying. He somersaulted a few times and fell to the ground like a dead dog. You're so weak and spineless. How could you become the leader of Dianzong? What a joke. Jiang Tian said disdainfully. Just treat me as a fart and let me go. If you kill me, won't you dirty your hands? Zhou Zixuan was completely scared out of his wits. He almost peed on the spot. He kowtowed again and again. Earth Immortal Jiang, how dare I call myself the leader of Diansong in front of you? I'm just an ant. His face was full of flattery and fawning. He smiled mischievously. Before this, Zhou Zixuan was proud of himself. He was detached from worldly affairs and had the demeanor of a celestial being. He could move freely between heaven and earth without lingering on worldly affairs. He looked down on Bai Tianlei, Hao Hongmei, and Yi Zhantin. He thought that they were all vulgar and intolerable. Their minds were invaded and polluted by worldly affairs. They were not as tough as his Taoist heart. But in front of a real desperate situation, under the threat of death, his mentality completely collapsed. So he showed such a dirty side. In other words, these filth and ugliness were originally hidden in the depths of his heart. At this moment, they were just stimulated and magnified. Cultivation was definitely not about living high in the clouds, hiding in the mountains, staying away from worldly affairs and right and wrong, and pretending to be detached from worldly affairs. Rolling in the mortal world, fighting in adversity, tempering and baptizing in wind and frost, gritting one's teeth, enduring humiliation, struggling and fighting with all one's strength, was the real cultivation. Compared with Jiang Tian, who had been fighting for thousands of years in his previous life, Zhou Zixuan, who had only been to Diansong a few times, had no Taoist heart at all. He hadn't even cultivated for a day. Chapter 761. Jiang Tian couldn't be bothered to look at the crowd. He shook his head and strode toward the depths of the sword catacomb. Master Kong, why don't you kill them all? Wolf King suggested fiercely. He was very angry. The behavior of these people really made him explode. They used to be subservient to Master Kong, but now they were threatening Master Kong. It doesn't matter. They will die soon. Jiang Tian shook his head indifferently. Jiang Tian was not a soft-hearted person, but he couldn't be bothered with those who were about to die. Besides, he could also observe the operation of the array and the flow of time through the time of their death. The storm soon subsided. Everyone calmed down and began to move toward the depths of the sword catacomb. Along the way, they found a lot of resources. There were many spirit herbs and grand medicines, such as 100-year-old Ganoderma lucidum, snow lotus, ginseng, sealwort. Those herbs were extremely rare in the outside world, but they could be seen everywhere here. They grew crazily like weeds. The most frightening thing was that those herbs were very old. There were a lot of spirit herbs that were 100 years old, a few hundred years old, and even 1,000 years old. Those grand medicines contained surging spirit chi that could easily push an ordinary person to the transcendent grandmaster level. We're rich. They're all grand medicines. I have to break through a few levels this time. Everyone was excited as if they had found a treasure. They scrambled to pick it. Zhou Zixuan and the other overlords swallowed the ginseng as if they were eating radishes. There were so many that they couldn't fit in their bags. At that moment, a few Russian overlords picked a few grand medicines that were as thick as an arm and walked toward the entrance, wanting to transport them out. Jiang Tian was also very excited, but he didn't show it on his face. He didn't even look at sealwort, ginseng, and Ganoderma lucidum. They were of little value to him. The key was that some of the grand medicines had never been found on Earth before. They belonged to the cultivation world, which was why Jiang Tian was interested. Jiang Tian only looked for some herbs that he needed and put them into the storage ring. This trip was indeed not in vain. Using these spirit grasses and great medicines, Jiang Tian could refine the Scarlet Flame Fortune Pill and the Foundation Establishment Pill. The Scarlet Flame Fortune Pill could help Jiang Tian break through to the 9th level of Qi refinement. As for the Foundational Pill, of course, it was for breaking through to the foundational level. Several hours later, a few Russian powerhouses who were transporting the medicine outside returned in a panic and said in shock, "We can't get out of the cave." "Yeah, even bullets can't break the water wave seal. What's going on? What? We can't get out. Why is it like this?" Everyone was in chaos. Anphia laughed disdainfully. "So what? Isn't this place pretty good? There are spirit herbs and great medicines everywhere. The scenery is pleasant and peaceful. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Everyone felt that it made sense. The scenery here was very beautiful, just like a paradise on earth. It would be pretty good to live here for the rest of one's life without going out. Moreover, according to historical records, the sword catacomb had spirituality. After a period of time, it might open on its own. However, after hearing Anfia's words, everyone despised Jiang Tian even more. They completely regarded Jiang Tian as a selfish villain. That's right, the sword catacomb was a little strange. It could suppress and imprison a cultivator's cultivation, but it wouldn't cause any harm to them. This earth immortal Jiang was clearly trying to scare everyone. Of course, no one dared to show this kind of situation. They only secretly complained in their hearts. After all, Jiang Tian could kill them if he wanted to now. Jiang Tian only focused on collecting the herbs he needed and couldn't be bothered to pay attention to her. During the day, Jiang Tian searched the sword catacomb with the others. At night, he sat on the ground with Sidu Shao and Wolf King Mu Tian to teach them cultivation techniques and help them stabilize their cultivation. Very quickly, Jiang Tian had gathered most of the medicinal herbs he needed. Oh my God, there's a corpse here. Why is it so big? On the fifth day, following a cry of surprise, everyone discovered an ancient battlefield. There were many huge corpses lying around here. Each one was more than 20 meters tall, like the corpses of ancient gods. There were many corpses, overlapping each other. White bones piled up like mountains, giving a huge visual impact. There were many huge treasured swords and armor scattered. Some were even bronze artifacts mottled with rust, full of the aura of time. There were also some artifacts like prayer beads, Buddha tablets, jade talismans, large seals, and so on that were still emitting huge magic power waves. Any one of these artifacts, weapons, and armors would shock the world outside. They were priceless and would attract the pursuit of experts. Many of the weapons were too big for everyone to carry. They could only pick up some short swords and smaller artifacts and put them in their bags. After another low hill, everyone looked into the distance and saw a mountain peak. There were continuous halls on it, majestic and solemn. They were abnormally gorgeous, blooming with rays of multicolored light, as if a palace from the heavens had descended to the mortal world. Too beautiful. This building is simply like the palace of an immortal. I'm never going to leave it again. Heavenly Palace. This must be the Heavenly Palace. The palace where the immortal of 9 swords lives. Many experts cheered in high spirits. So beautiful. Along the way, they had gained so much that Anfia had forgotten the pain of losing her father. She opened her arms and cheered. At this time, a Russian physical awakener suddenly took off his shirt and threw it on the ground, cursing, "Damn! Why is it so hot? And I'm very tired and hungry. I just ate a huge ginseng. It was like a radish. Yeah, I'm also very tired and hungry. I want to sleep, and it's so hot. This is so strange," someone said with a strange expression. At this time, everyone noticed something strange. Their skin was terrifyingly red, as if it were about to drip blood. They all had dark circles under their eyes and their skin seemed a little dry and old. Someone cursed, "Damn it, I can't stand it. I feel like there's a fire burning inside my body." For a moment, the crowd was in chaos. Some said that they couldn't take any more treasures and should return. Some said that there must be more artifacts in the Heavenly Palace. It would be a worthwhile trip if they went to take a look. It hurts. It hurts so much. Suddenly, the Russian awakened fell to the ground, rolled on the ground, and screamed desperately. "It feels like there's a fire burning inside my body. I can't stand it anymore. Somebody help me." At this time, everyone was shocked to see that his body was red. Blood was oozing out, and his skin was quickly wrinkling. Then the crowd fell to the ground one by one, rolling on the ground, struggling and screaming desperately. The excruciating pain was unbearable. Everyone felt as if they were in purgatory. "I don't want to die. Somebody help me." The Russian awakened who fell first was in his 30s. He was vigorous and intimidating. But at this moment, his black hair was turning white at a speed visible to the naked eye. His bulging muscles were shriveling at a speed visible to the naked eye. His body, which was as straight as a javelin, was bending rapidly. In just a few minutes, he had turned into a white-haired, dying old man. Soon after, a few more people followed suit and died. Then, an even more horrible scene appeared. The corpses quickly decomposed. In less than 10 minutes, they had turned into piles of bones. Why is this happening? At this time, Enfia was also dumbfounded. Her face was as pale as paper, and her legs were trembling. She exclaimed to Jiang Tian, "Mr. Jiang, what's going on?" "But there's a time acceleration array here." Jiang Tian said indifferently, "In short, the time here is different. To put it simply, the flow of time in the sword tomb is different from the outside world. One day here is equivalent to 10 years in the outside world. We have been here for 5 days, which is equivalent to 50 years. How is this possible? A time acceleration array." Everyone exclaimed in disbelief. It sounded illogical, but what was happening in front of them made them believe it. The people aged rapidly, and the corpses decomposed quickly. What's so strange about this? Jiang Tian said indifferently, "Haven't you heard of the legend that a day in the cave is equivalent to 1,000 years in the world?" It was said that during the Jin dynasty, a woodcutter named Wang Ji went to the Stone Room Mountain to chop firewood. He saw 2 boys playing Go, so he sat aside and watched. The boy gave Wang Ji something that looked like a date stone. He put it in his mouth and did not feel hungry. Before the game ended, the boy told him that his axe handle was rotten. With a wave of his hand, Wang Ji left the cave. Wang Ji returned to the village and found out that 1,000 years had passed. Therefore, later generations called the Stone Room Mountain Lank Mountain, and Lank was another name for Go. According to Jiang Tian's speculation, Wang Ji went to a side world created by some powerful cultivators. It was outside of the 3 realms and 5 elements. The powerful cultivators could control and slow down time. 1,000 years in the outside world would be equivalent to only 1 day in the stone room. The current sword tomb had also been set up with a similar time array outside. However, this array did the opposite. It sped up time in the sword room. A day in the sword room was equivalent to 10 years in the outside world. This train of thought could be said to be crafty, intending to completely trap Jiang Tian inside, letting him be corroded by time and die of old age. After all, many people speculated that Jiang Tian's cultivation was around the level of an earth immortal. 300 years was his limit. They only needed to trap Jiang Tian for 30 days, and 300 years would have passed. By then, Jiang Tian would have become a pile of bones. When Jiang Tian finished explaining the secret of time acceleration, everyone's faces turned pale. They were in panic and despair. And Fia's face was pale. She knelt down in front of Jiang Tian and begged, "Mr. Jiang, you have a way to get out, don't you? You must be able to stay young, right? I don't want to die here. I still want to live. Master Kong, please help us." At this time, Zhou Zixuan, the head of the Diansong sect, and the others were also lying on the ground. They were being eroded by time. They felt that their auras were declining and their bodies were weak. It was as if they had 1 foot in the grave. Especially for Zhou Zixuan, it was a cruel blow. After he became a man immortal, he returned to his youth. His white hair turned black, his teeth grew new, and his wrinkles disappeared. But now, there were strands of white hair growing out from his black hair, as if it was dyed snow. Deep wrinkles and yellow-brown spots appeared on his tight skin. His teeth shook and fell out. He looked like an old man. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.